We had a fight in the chow hall, but a guy killed another recruit over a donut. He just beat him to death over a donut, and I think they were a week before they graduated. And you're looking around like, what the fuck? I get it, man. These are tough people. But I was like, fuck, this is like some prison shit. So I was like, ooh, maybe going to the Marines was not the best choice. Tommy, he fell over backwards, and he just kind of was staring up in the sky. And it all happened so quick. But Tommy had been shot through the neck. He was killed instantly. My teammates, he was coming up in the tower, and he saw it. He knew what was coming next. He yelled, "Sniper, get down." And I dove for cover. A crack went over my head. And I'm just sitting there staring at Tommy on the ground. We were pinned down for 30 minutes. The phone rang. Fucking go over to the embassy. You're gonna sit on a guy. So I'm like, roger that. I meet the guy, and man, he's got these cold black eyes, bro. I mean, he looked like a shark. This dude was a killer, a murderer. I had an interpreter so I could talk to the guy. Well, long story short, he was an assassin. He was contracted by the Taliban to come over and kill an extremely high-level person. He's a professional, and he figured out they were setting him up for failure. The conversation was kind of going south. Now, my name's Kirk Spradely. Go by Tadpole. That's my call sign that some people know me as. Served as a Force Recon Marine from 91 to 95 and then 97 to 2000 with 3rd Force Recon Company. I went to Blackwater in 04 for a year. Then I went to the special programs, OGA special programs, where I spent 12 years. Tried to go in the Army. They said I was too old, so I went in the National Guard. I was the oldest person to go to flight school. I was 39 years old when I graduated. I did 2 deployments as a Blackhawk pilot, switched over to the Apache a few years later. I spent 3 years in the Kurdish military, flying their helicopters. I tried to get in the Peshmerga, and that's a long story, but they weren't letting Westerners go to the front at that time. So that's more or less my military and contract background. I've done a few things since then. And I'm currently flying EMS helicopters in the Atlanta area full-time, and I fly corporate jets part-time. My upbringing was great for the first 3 years. I was born in Pascagoula, Mississippi. My father was a retired aeronautical engineer. He was a crop duster on the weekends. We moved to Winder, Georgia. I don't know when, but my mother worked for the telephone company. She managed a airport in Jackson, and she rode motorcycles. She was killed by a hit-and-run driver on her motorcycle. They never found the guy, obviously. I was 3 years old at the time. My half-brothers who were with me went back to live with their biological father. Me and my dad moved down to Pensacola, Florida. Lived with him for a few years, and there was my half-brothers were taken into a foster family because their biological father was abusive, and I was visiting them when my father died of a heart attack, and so I wound up being adopted by this foster family. In this particular case, they were extremely abusive to my middle brother, just horrible. I don't know, some people are just sadistic, man. There was something wrong with the mother and her youngest son. I had a dog, and he used to hold my dog up by her neck and choke her in front of me and just say, "There's nothing you can do about this, and I'll kill your dog," and all this just weird stuff. The mother beat my brother just unmercifully, man, unmercifully. I was never abused physically, but I witnessed this, and certainly that plays a part in your, psyche or upbringing or whatever. I would say from then on, I have a tremendous soft spot for animals and for children, probably because of those experiences. But my older brother, he decided the only way we're going to get out of this was to kill the foster mother He went to prison. I would say they were probably connected within the community, is my guess. They did have a little bit of money. And so he was found guilty and he was tried as an adult. He was 14. He was the youngest person to go to prison in Alabama at 15. Some years later, it came out that they didn't cross all the T's and dot the I's as far as charging a child with, or trying him as an adult. So they just retried him and found him guilty again. You know, we didn't have any money, and hey man, you know, there's people with money, and it seems like things work out for them more so than it does for people without money. But he went to prison forever, regardless of the abuse, and there's plenty of documented abuse, and that's just what happened. And I went to a Catholic orphanage. There was some structure from the religious side, but it was a lot of unwanted kids, if you will. And so, you know, you learn to fight, man, is the easiest answer to that. It was just a lot of fighting. I wasn't very good at it at first, but man, it's survival, unfortunately. It's a terrible place for a kid to be in, but that's where I found myself through no fault of my own. And if there's anyone out there watching this and that's your story, you know, you were there through no fault of your own, you know, for sure. You don't want a child to have to go through this, but if you can make it through this, it definitely makes you a stronger, tougher person. Like I said, I don't recommend it. Very few people made it out. I know one other person that made it out who I've been in contact with recently, and his technique was to go into the ministry. He deals with, you know, our childhood by preaching to the homeless, prisoners, things of that nature, just sharing the gospel, trying to do the right thing in that manner. So he's the only other person I know that made it out. Most people that we grew up with are in prison or homeless or, you know, dead. Fighting at that time was not like, I don't know, schoolyard stuff you might find common. There were certainly bigger kids than me. And if they beat me, you know, if they won the fight, you can't just let that ride. And you have to think outside the box. And I would wait for them to go to sleep at night, and I'd go get a mop and I'd beat them. And, you know, I'd get caught and they'd send me to juvenile hall, you know, just whatever, you know. So yeah, it wasn't just fighting. It was just, you had to one up the other person. You had to dominate this person in some way or they would dominate you. And it was, I mean, it was Lord of the Flies, you know, and you don't want that when you're 8 years old. But again, you know, none of us chose to go there. We just found ourselves in that situation. So a lot of things stand out, but one thing in particular was I put a knife to a kid's throat over some food. You had to fight for your food at sometimes. There was either one nun or one what's called house parent in charge of, say, 15 kids, so they can't see everything. And, you know, you might have someone steal your food or whatever. So I remember putting a knife to a kid's throat and just saying, you know, I'll kill you. And I was 9 years old. I was 9 years old and I was prepared to kill a human being. So, you know, hey man, I recognize now that's probably not normal, you know, but that's just the life those were the circumstances we found ourselves in at that time. I'd always wanted to be a professional soldier. Even before all that stuff, I read a lot of books and heard a lot of stories from my dad, my uncles, stuff like that. And it just seemed like something I wanted to do. You know, you got to do something for a living. I wanted to be a professional soldier. So I went to military school with the intent of getting into a service academy. And just, you know, that was going to be my life. Military school, particularly at that time, was everything I wanted and needed. I was finally surrounded by people who thought like I did. Now there were kids who were there for discipline reasons. Their parents couldn't control them or whatever, or they were never home, or etc. Not judging. I'm just saying. And they weren't really, they weren't really digging the whole military vibe. But then I met people like me who always wanted to go in the military. People that were just could tell you every fact about every battle in history, and just these were things I found interesting. And so now I'm surrounded by people who think like I do, and you can concentrate on your academics, you can concentrate on your physical fitness, you can concentrate on all these things. There's no distractions. And so you're just laser focused on this task. And it was also a 2-year junior college that had a 2-year commission program for the Army. So you had active duty Army guys there teaching you the latest and greatest leadership techniques. And many of them are Vietnam veterans. So imagine being 15 years old and getting this instruction from a person who had been in combat within, say, like the last few years, or, whatever, last 10 years. You can't beat that, if that's the career you want, look at the benefits of that situation. So I was very fortunate to have gone there. I would say I was about 5 years old when I started. I knew I wanted something adventurous, challenging, etc. I was 8 years old when I was watching TV, watching the news, and that's when Operation Eagle Claw occurred, and it was on the news, the aftermath. The Iranian, some group, an Iranian group overthrew the Shah, or he had left maybe a few weeks earlier, but they had taken over the U.S. Embassy. And the presidential administration wanted to mount a rescue attempt. And this was Delta's first rescue attempt. And it was obviously mismanaged and not put together the way we would put something together today, of course. And there was a collision at a site called Desert One in Iran where CH-53 collided with a C-130. And that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. They canceled the mission at that point. And then the Iranian press and everyone went to the site at first light and took pictures. And I believe I want to say it was 3 Marines who were killed and several Air Force personnel on the AFSOC, or I don't know if they had AFSOC back then, but several Air Force crew members on the C-130. And, you're 8 years old watching this, and on one hand, it's humiliating for your country. On the other hand, you find out that there is such a job out there that involves sneaking into other countries and doing these incredible missions. So I guess I saw the positive side of that, yes, this was considered a failure of a mission and we lost people. But having said that, now I was introduced to the world of special operations and combat aviation and all these different things. So that made a huge impression on me for sure. I went to my recruiter. It was Desert Shield right before Desert Storm. And I said, I want to join the infantry. And recruiters have some leeway, but they have quotas. And he looked at my test scores and he wanted to put me in an MOS that required a higher GT score. And I kind of sort of figured that out, but not really. And he was trying to push me into a field radio operator, 2531 at the time. And I said, I don't want to do that. I want to go in the infantry. I want to carry machine guns. I want to go fight. He said, well, you are going to fight. So he kind of, he did what recruiters do. He said, you're going to fight, but you're going to call in airstrikes and artillery and medevac. You're going to be the guy. You're going to be the man. You're going to be the radio operator. And the way he sold it to me, I was like, okay, but I'm still in infantry. He goes, yeah, you'll go to infantry school, which technically wasn't a lie because back then there were 2 infantry schools. One was called MCT. It was Marine Combat Training, which was a kind of bare bones infantry tactics type thing. You go to the field, you do these things, you set up machine guns, you fire grenade launchers, all this type of stuff, but it does not produce an infantry MOS. I didn't know that. I just knew I was going to an infantry school, but I didn't know it would not produce the MOS. You had to go to the 03 syllabus after MCT. He didn't tell me that. So it wound up working out for me because I went to 29 Palms and got the 2531 MOS, the field radio operator. And it turned out, and again, I had not considered going into recon at this time, but once I found out that there are 2 feeder MOSs for recon at that time. One was infantry and one was field radio operator. So I wound up getting an MOS that was helpful to me. I don't know if he knew that or not, but it worked out for me in the long run. Boot camp was, everyone sees the movies, and again, I'm just being honest, I had not wanted to go into the Marines. That was not my career goal. I was going to use the Marines to get combat experience and to go SF. That was my plan. And I thought that having that on my resume, hard training, I mean, the Marines have a great reputation, right? So that would get me to the next step in my military career. It was kind of the way I looked at it. But I did not want to be a Marine versus all these guys in my at boot camp that's all they wanted to do their whole life. They wanted to be a Marine. And so you start picking up on that vibe, like, hey man, this is a good place to be. Look how motivated these guys are. We had, now having said that, we had a fight in the chow hall, not our, was it battalion? Not our battalion. I think might have been 3rd Battalion. But a guy killed another recruit over a donut. He just beat him to death over a donut, and I think they were a week before they graduated. So the drill instructors are like, hey, so-and-so just killed so-and-so, and you're looking around like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, I get it, man. These are tough people. But I was like, fuck, this is prison, man. This is like some prison shit. Guy kills another guy over a donut. This is like, Foreign Legion stuff. So I was like, ooh, maybe going to the Marines was, not the best choice. And then I saw a kid, 18-year-old. I was 18. He got his shoulder dislocated on like day 2 or 3 by one of the drill instructors. And that may have been swept under the rug, but the kid's dad was a drill instructor in one of the other companies. So when he found out about it, man, all hell broke loose. The DI got relieved. NCIS or the Navy guys came in taking statements. And I'm like, is this part of their psyops? Are they trying to, no, just, take it on face value. This dude broke a dude's arm, and now it's an investigation. So it was like, on the one hand, it was like, man, I did not count on this. On the other hand, it was violent. There was a lot of violence, and I kind of, because of my life or whatever, was accustomed to violence. So I was kind of like, well, this is where I'm supposed to be. These are my people. These are my people. Another thing that stood out was the people who came to the Marines. Again, I had no desire to be in the Marines. I was just kind of using it. I wanted the hard training. I wanted the combat. I wanted all that, but I didn't like grow up wanting to be a Marine. And I started meeting people who wanted to be a Marine. We had our guide who's in charge of the platoon. He was a staff sergeant in the 82nd Airborne. He was an infantry guy. And the infantry is a tough lifestyle. Jumping out of planes is a tough lifestyle. And he went to his chain of command. And he just said, man, I need an MOS change. I want to get my 20 years. But, I not in the infantry. Come on, guys. I think I've served my country. And they're like, no, man, we need leaders, blah, blah. He goes, if you don't let me out, or if you don't let me change my MOS, I'll join the Marines. I don't give a shit. I'm like, you're a staff sergeant in the 82nd Airborne. You're not going to join the Marines. He joined the Marines. So he came in as an E2. And he's running around getting treated like shit. But he had like a smile on his face. I'm like, why is this guy so happy? Because he's not in charge. You know what I mean? He wound up being in charge, and he got meritorious Lance Corporal there. Then he wound up picking up Corporal in 29 Palms. So they took care of him, but it was just kind of funny. He came to the Marines because, the Marines is prestigious. We had We had a French Army guy quit, obviously. I don't know. He was a chest beater, and I thought he was going to do very well, and he quit like after a week. And that was kind of telling, because you see this person that looks like they can physically take the training and they quit. And you see the guy that doesn't look impressive and he does extremely well in training. And you're like, We had a Foreign Legion guy there. He had been a lieutenant in the Army, Ranger school, jump school. And I think he was in the Guard and he couldn't get on active duty. And so he went to the Foreign Legion, and he spent 6 years in the Foreign Legion. And then he wanted to come back to America. So he joined the Marines. So you're seeing all these people come to the Marines. And where initially I was like, I'm going to use it to build my resume, if you will. And then I see the people who I'm surrounded by. I'm like, man, this is the place to be. Look at all these people. They know more than I do, and they're coming to the Marines. Maybe this is, the sitting some shit job, you know what I mean, if you will. So I started changing my attitude, and it was boot camp it was the people I met at boot camp that made me change my attitude because of their attitude. I went to the field radio operator course in 29 Palms. I went into the reserves because, again, my goal was to get into SF, and you have to kind of, at that time, you couldn't just go straight in. You had to have kind of build your resume, if you will. So I went in the reserves thinking I would finish college and then, try to go in, the Rangers, or go in as an officer or something like that. So I'm in 29 Palms, and then I get assigned to SCAMP, Sensor Control and Management Platoon. And it's technically an infantry MOS or a secondary MOS after infantry. The idea was you go out, you set up these sensors, and you monitor enemy movement, you call in airstrikes or whatever. And I was not digging this at all, man. This was not what I wanted to do as a job. You know what I mean? Man, I wanted to jump out of planes. I wanted to do cool stuff. Well, for, coincidence or whatever you want to call it, they were right next door to the Force Company. So there's 3rd Force, and then there was Force Scamp, I think it was. So they were right next door. So you're going in there, man, and you're getting treated like shit. We had black boots back then. You had to shine your boots, polish your boots, and just uniform bullshit. Well, you'd see the recon dudes come in, man, and they're wearing like flight suits, and they're drinking coffee, and they're bullshit with each other. And a Lance Corporal is buddies with a E5, that shit don't happen over here. It's very strict. But over there, it's just dudes hanging out. And then they go and they got these, what I found out was MP5s, and they're doing CQB. Then they put on gray jumpsuits, and they put on these gray parachutes, and they get in the C-130, and they do free fall. They're doing halo jumps, and they got boats, they got scuba gear. They're blowing shit up. They're jumping out of planes. And I'm like, dude, holy shit, who's that? I want to be one of those guys. And of course, all the negative Nancy's are like, oh man, you can't be one of those guys. You'll never be one of those guys. Or, so that's how I found out about recon. So I went to my commander, and I just said, sir, this no offense, this really isn't for me. This type of this job. I don't really think this is high speed. I want to be a recon guy. I know that I can go and take the NDOC and, get all the schools. I can be over there, et cetera, et cetera. And I just showed up, you know what I mean? And he's heard it all. And I was a PFC, and he's heard it all before, man. You know what I mean? And he's trying to do the right thing as a Marine officer. He has to be concerned with having good people in his unit in case he is called to go to war. So he doesn't want to lose his high performers, but he doesn't want to stifle people's career either. So he's kind of caught in the middle. And he was like, look, man, you just got here, but they do need people. And I can whatever the approval process, I can approve you to go there and do the end. Because if you pass the NDOC and they're like, yo, we're going to take this guy, the orders are cut that day. you are now a member of that unit. Now, you're not a recon guy, but you're in that reconnaissance unit, and they can send you to schools and stuff. But again, I just shown up. And so he was like, look, I tell you what, let's have this conversation in 6 months. And there had better be a reason we're having this conversation. You better shine like, the top of the Chrysler building or, whatever. So that was his guidance to me. So he gave me that opportunity. He was like, I'm not going to tell you no, but man, no, you got to give me 6 months, and you better be performing like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not just going to, because you know what I mean? You can't take a problem and just pass this problem around. You need to show that there's a reason you're going over there. And in 6 months, we had the conversation, man. I had a first class PFT every time. I volunteered for any number of training opportunities and things of that nature. And he was like, all right, good luck.
What was it like taking the NDOC?
I'm sure it's more standardized these days, or maybe not. I don't know. It was fascinating because if you stack up like the things you do just like on paper against, say, I don't know, Marine boot camp, you would say, well, this is significantly harder. You know what I mean? This is phenomenally harder. But then you want it to be there. Like boot camp, I was like, man, this sucks, man. I'm here for 3 months. This sucks. But the NDOC and the training, the follow-on training was like, you wanted to be here because, man, you're surrounded by high performers. And they're not yelling and screaming, man. They honestly don't give a shit if you make it or not. I mean, they do, but they don't tell you that. They're just like, all right, you're going to be doing the PFT. You know what the standard are. You got, in 5 minutes, we'll do the run. I think if there was it push-ups? No, pull-ups, sit-ups, and 3 mile run, I think. And that's like, you do that, you get done. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is 500 meters, freestyle in the pool. You've got 12 and a half minutes because that's the combat dive standard. So, man, you just did a PT test. And normally that's like you take the rest of the day off. Well, now you got to get in the pool. You get finished with the pool. Now you got to do a rut march. Now you got to go to the obstacle course. So you got all this stuff that you're doing and just like, holy shit. And some dudes are quitting. Some dudes are just like, fuck, man, I didn't know it was going to be like this. And then some guys weren't meeting the standard. It's like you didn't make the time. And they weren't like assholes. They were just like, you didn't meet the standard on the road march. Thank you for coming out. Not an asshole. It was just very matter of fact. So when it was all over with and you're one of the guys still standing, you're like, hell yeah, man, So so that's the way I looked at it. And I'm sure that all the guys that completed that stuff would say the same thing. This was very anticlimactic. Remember, this is like step 1 out of step 15. So, you weren't one of the guys, you weren't in the crowd or anything. They didn't mind if like you high-five your buddies or whatever, but like, you hadn't made it. I mean, this is just step 1, you know what I mean? There was all these other schools you had to pass. So it was kind of like you weren't a turd, but you weren't one of them either. You know what I mean? So, but you did feel like, hey, at least I made it past this part. And then you go to either the amphibious reconnaissance school on the East Coast or basic reconnaissance course on the West Coast, just depending on what slots they had available. I wanted to go into the East Coast, Fort Story, and I'm told it closed down. And I think Fort Story is closed down, or at least the ARS. But I went there and I thought it was very challenging. It was the type of training that I wanted to do. Like I always thought, this is like the kind of training you do if you're trying to get in an elite unit, swims in the ocean, road marches, mission planning, calculating tides and currents, stuff like that. So it was everything I wanted. But yeah, it was very physical, and I saw guys quitting or guys not make the standard. The water was cold, and we had a guy quit the day before graduation, which I thought was the most bizarre thing. He sat in the bleachers and watched us graduate. Man, it was crazy. I felt bad for that guy, but it was we didn't. I don't think we called it Hell Week. And I know like at Bud's they have a very formal thing they call Hell Week. We had 2 iterations of 5 days of no sleep. And I don't remember it being called Hell Week, but the first one was in the patrolling phase, and it wasn't like PT and log run. It wasn't like that. It was missions. It was just like whenever it started Monday morning or whatever, the team leader got, he received the mission, and then you started planning for this reconnaissance mission. You did some walkthroughs and you did some rehearsals, and the helicopters came in. You got in you inserted at Fort AP Hill, I think it was, and you patrolled all night and you sent back spot reports, and you did a full mission profile 5 times in a row for each day with no sleep. And like I said, I don't know what's harder, doing PT for 5 days with no sleep or doing missions, but their technique, the Marine Recon community, was we want you to be able to fulfill the mission under the most extreme circumstances, and that's no sleep, no food, they didn't tell you couldn't eat, but you just didn't have time. Like, what are you going to do? Where's the food going to come from? Because you only have so much room in your rucksack, and you have to carry batteries for the radios and ammo and water. Water's more important than food in the field. So I don't remember them saying we can't eat, but I don't remember eating. And then, of course, after day 3 of no sleep, you start hallucinating really bad, man. Man, you just start, I don't know if there's any training value in it. I think people just do that to say that they're, we've always done it this way or whatever, or to see if you can gut it out. But I didn't get a lot of training value after day 3, man, because you just start seeing weird shit. Some guy got attacked by dogs. He goes running past me in the middle of the night, like, fucking dogs. Like, man, there's no dogs out here. But he was hallucinating. I saw a pile of little kids, which wound up being the radio operator and the instructor trying to send we had these things called DCTs, digital communication terminals. It was like sending an encrypted text message. And, but it had like this red glow. So you put a poncho liner on top of you so that no one could see it. But in the middle of the night, it looked like this pile of little kids. I was like, man, I'm losing it. And then you have the amphib phase, which is the second phase. And you do the same thing there. 5 days of nonstop amphibious missions. And it's cold water, it's boats, there's a thing called the confirmatory beach reconnaissance report. The idea is recon Marines go in before the amphibious landing, and you have to make sure that the soil can take the weight of various vehicles, or that the ships can get close enough for the ramp to come down, or that there's no pillboxes and, guns and that would repel an amphibious landing. So it's a very detailed thing. And like I said, man, it's 5 days of no sleep. And I fell asleep standing up during the debriefs a couple of times, which was funny. But the training was very difficult, man, but I really loved it. At the time, there was Battalion Recon and Force Recon. The difference was Force Recon would go further, and I don't want to throw out random numbers, but I want to say something like 200 miles behind the flot. For some reason, that number's coming up, but you would go beyond. There was a distance associated with that, but it was a very long range reconnaissance mission versus, I believe, the Battalion Recon is kind of a little closer to the forces and able to kind of give them time-sensitive information for like targets and stuff like that. If you saw the movie or that HBO miniseries, Generation Kill, that was a Battalion Recon guys being able to find targets and send that information back, and you can get airstrikes or artillery on it, pretty fast. Whereas theoretically, the Force Recon units would be much deeper prep in that area, perhaps, meeting with partisans, maybe blowing up. We used to train on blowing up bridges, a long-range patrol to blow up a bridge. And recently, John Ripley, Lieutenant Colonel, passed away a few years ago. He did that in Vietnam, and he was a Force Recon guy, and his award is being upgraded to the Medal of Honor. But that was his mission. He was a one-man mission, and he went to this bridge, and he climbed underneath it and set charges and blew the bridge. It was a very effective technique to prevent conventional forces from coming into this particular area. But that was one of the missions we trained for, back then. So. This is in the 90s, so it was peacetime. We did counter-narcotics operations. It was called Joint Task Force 6. That was a big deal at the time. The Sicario movies are a highly exaggerated version of what we did. We didn't do anything like that. But we were in uniform, carrying loaded weapons in the United States with a counter-narcotics mission. So that was pretty cool. We did a body recovery dive. It had initially been reported as a terrorist incident. It was actually an accident. It was the Coast Guard saw a burning bridge, and a bridge was missing, and there was these train engines in the water on fire, and they reported up the chain. And by the time we got to the FBI, somehow that turned into terrorists blew up a bridge and took out a train. So we were combat divers. So we were called in for the wound up being a body recovery dive that took 3 days to recover everyone, but they thought there might be demolition still on the bridge. And once we found out, it was like a horrible accident, actually almost a criminal act. There's a documentary on how that happened. A barge got loose and went up the river. But in any case, that was a highlight because in this business, you're going to see people die. You don't always, and it's not always combat when you see them die. And you are an American, you're in the American military, and the American public wants you to do certain things. And in this case, you're recovering Americans, who've been, killed in an accident, and it's your job because, that's what they want you to do. I will say, and that was kind of it was the first time I saw a toxic leader. That's a long story, but it's also the first time I saw someone do something that I consider heroic that I hesitated to do, man. I think it was day 2 or 3. A little girl her body had floated up to the surface, and she was probably 8 years old. And I saw her, and I had fins, and I knew that I could jump in the water and go get her. Obviously, she was deceased, man. But I hesitated. I didn't want to do it, And we had an NCO, and I can't remember who it was. Unfortunately, I'd say his name. Zero hesitation, man. He dove in the water. He went over there and he recovered her and brought her body back, or she would have went downriver. So that was an example of someone setting the example, leading by example, and that's what you want. And that would come back years later in combat. You don't order people to do something, you show them how it's done, and then everyone follows you. And that's what that individual did. And man, I wish I could remember who that was. But zero hesitation, man. He just dove in and got her.
What was the bad leadership call?
We had an officer who was not well liked. He could PT and all that stuff, but he was just a toxic leader, man. And I don't know what the guy's problem was, honestly, man. He just, no one liked him. He was just one of those douchebags, man. Like I'm the commander. I'm an officer. I'm a recon guy, and it's like, okay, well, I mean, fuck, we're all on the same team. He made some very disparaging remarks about an elderly person that he had recovered from one of the train cars. And he was doing it in such a way as if we would be impressed by it. And myself and one of the NCOs kind of looked at. I was on a Zodiac at this point, and one of the NCOs was on the Zodiac with me, and we heard this fucking guy say that shit, man. And we just looked at each other like, who the fuck do you think you are, man? You know what I mean? You're supposed to be the commander. And just some really disparaging shit, man, about how he recovered this female, her body. She was an elderly person. I was like, what a fucking piece of shit. He said he pulled her up by her hair, in her panties, and he would have done it with his teeth, but, you know, I was like, man, who the fuck are you trying to impress, man? I mean, that's just what are you, 10 years old? I mean, you're supposed to be an officer. You're supposed to be a recon Marines. There's press everywhere, which is if you want to hear that story, I got actually kind of a funny story. But man, I didn't like the guy anyway, and no one really did. And that was one of those things you learn in the military is you're not going to like every boss you have. You're not going to agree with them, but every now and then you get a total fucking turd, and there's nothing you can do about it, man. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't tell this guy he's a fucking turd because he's your boss, you know? But yeah, man, he wound up retiring a couple years later, and yeah, man, he was a fucking turd, man. So man, it's a lot of work. Diving is a physical thing, and then of course you're recovering dead bodies, and that's an emotional thing. And you're out there in the sun and the water, and man, you're just going to get tired. And you're there for 3 days. We were there for 3 days. And I was tired, man. I was hungry, and I needed a fucking break. And I had some water, and I had an MRE, and man, I just needed 3 minutes to choke down some food. And it was a little later in the afternoon, man. We'd been going all day, right? Well, the only place to sit was on the barge, and that's where we put all the bodies that we had recovered. Now, we covered them with sheets and stuff. I think the Coast Guard flew in some stuff, or maybe the local hospital, but they were all covered. But it's obviously it's the bodies. And I'm sitting there next to the because there's nowhere else to sit. I'm hungry, man, so I'm eating. I'm drinking a bottle of water or whatever, and I look over in the wood line because by then the press is showing up, and I see this guy. He's looking at me. He's taking a picture, and I already see what's happening. There's bodies right beside me. I'm eating, and there, you know what I mean? Like I knew how this shit was gonna go. I was like, motherfucker, man, what a fucking piece of shit. So I went through my chain of command. I was like, hey, man, this is what happened. Well, by then, we kind of worked. We had a really good relationship with the FBI SWAT team, and there's regional SWAT teams. Well, by this time, HRT had come down. Now, HRT has a dive capability, and I don't think regional SWAT teams do, but the HRT did. So they're showing up, and they're like, hey, man, dude, good job, good work. Thank you, man. You've really, fucking helped us out here. So I'm going through the chain of command like, hey, dude, this guy just took a fucking picture of me eating chow next to the, bodies. And I'm like, don't worry about this. And they go and they tell the HRT guy, like, hey, bro, some fucking dudes over there taking pictures trying to make us look bad. And he goes, no problem. I'll take care of it. I don't know what was said. I didn't hear the conversation, but a couple of HRT dudes walk over into the wood line and, give this dude a little. The picture never showed up. The picture never saw the light of day. So thank you to the FBI, HRT, folks, in 1993, was that September, October, 93. Thank you guys for squaring me away. Because, what good would have come out of that, man? You see what I'm saying? It was just one of those shitty little, but then we started having classes on how to talk to the press and how to act when they're around, because they're not your buddy, man. They're not your friend. The biggest thing about those years leading up to GWAT was I didn't see you have to put forth a lot of effort to stay in these units, to stay up with the training and the jumping and the diving and all the, the shooting and the deployments and stuff like that. And there's no war going on. So I thought I should go into federal law enforcement. A long story short is that I was a bouncer for 8 years of my life because I couldn't get a law enforcement job. Nobody would hire me. So for 8 years of my life, despite my credentials, which I thought were pretty good, nobody would hire me, man.
What kind of federal law enforcement agency doesn't want a Force Recon Marine, dude? Like, what?
Yeah.
That's kind of like surprising.
Yeah. I got turned down by New Orleans. I got turned down by Mobile. I got turned down by Mobile sheriffs. I got turned down by Orlando. I got turned down by everybody I applied to. And when I finally talked to an investigator, I said, man, what am I doing wrong here? What am I doing wrong? And he said, man, you took the psychological test and they asked you if you were willing to shoot a machine gun and jump out of an airplane. And you said, yes. And I said, well, that was my job description. He goes, no, man, you can't say that. It makes it sound like you're some kind of risk taker. And you had some speeding tickets, 10 years ago or whatever. So they think you're a rule breaker, man. And I'm like, you got all that out of 2 questions? Seriously? He goes, look, dude, you're going to come back in 6 months. We're going to have a conversation before you go take the test. You're going to take the test and it's all going to work out. No big deal. And my pride just wouldn't let me do it, man. I was like, man, fuck this shit. Whereas theoretically what I should have done was just go back in 6 months. But it hurt my pride that I had been turned down. So, I'll show those guys, but he was trying to help me out, man. But he told me, he said, man, we're trying to get away from those type of guys. We're trying to do more community policing and stuff like that. I was like, well, okay, what happens when, look at today, what happens when you have somebody running through a school, murdering children? How's your community policing going to work out then? Or do you want a risk taker to go in there and put that person down and save the other kids? You tell me. So anyway, I never got a job in law enforcement, and I spent 8 years of my life breaking up fights and checking IDs and yeah. So what was next was September 11th, and then that changed everything. Suddenly, people realized, because I wasn't the only guy out there that was underemployed. I was a manager of a nightclub in Mobile, and one of the bouncers called my roommates and said, hey, man, go wake up Kirk. And they're like, man, I ain't waking up Kirk. They said, man, wake him up. He's going to want to see this. So I turned on the TV and I saw what everybody else was seeing, and I was like, holy shit, man, it happened. We always said something like this could happen, don't let your guard down. And I was actually the assistant manager, and the manager I talked to later, he was an ex-Army guy. And he was like, hey, man, what are you going to do? I said, man, I'm going to go talk to the recruiter. He goes, yeah, I've already talked to him. So he had not been in the infantry in his previous MOS, but he went to the Army recruiter and said, I want to be in the infantry. They said, yep, roger that. So he left the bars in which he went back in the Army as 11 Bravo. I go to the recruiter and I'm like, hey, man, I'm former Marine, blah, blah, blah. And then it was a gunnery sergeant. He said, man, this thing's going to be over in 6 months. He goes, don't do it, man. You don't want to do this. So literally the recruiter talked me out of going back in. So I was like, okay, well, shit, And then I actually, to be fair, I wound up meeting an officer recruiter who came in the bar, and we got to talking. And he actually told me about Marine flight school and stuff like that. So I'm not going to say that opportunity was not presented to me. It's just that I had a lot of things I wanted to do before I went to the cockpit. You know what I mean? There was a lot of stuff on the ground I had to get out of my system before I made that move. So, so the Marines did, kind of, the gunnery sergeant wouldn't let me re-enlist, but the officer recruiters were interested in talking to me. So I will say that. Then I wound up moving up to Atlanta. So I lost touch with those guys. But I applied to triple canopy. They said they wanted guys with combat experience. I get it. I applied to Blackwater, and they're like, absolutely, man. They were trying to plus up their numbers. So I went to Blackwater in 2004, and I did a year on their State Department programs. I started out on the Mamba teams, which is an armored vehicles that we would take people to the airport back and forth up and down Route Irish. I did that for a couple weeks. Then I went to the PSD team in Hilla, and then I went over to Karbala. When I was in Karbala, I like being in Baghdad. I love being on the Mambas. You felt so, you felt bulletproof, which I learned quickly you're not, which I think is what you're getting at. But Karbala and Al Hilla, man, I loved it. It was just a great time, man. I learned a lot, met great people. But then, you go home and you're kind of full of yourself, or at least I was. I was like, yo, man, I went to war and, blah, blah, blah. I'm the shit. And then, man, a week after I left, the truck that I'd been driving, the gun truck got IED'd, and it killed my replacement. So, and he was from Atlanta, and we talked about, he had worked at some of the bars too. And so, you're wanting action, and I don't know if those guys wanted action or they just, were doing their thing, but, you're sitting there looking for action, and you don't get it, and then your replacement gets killed because you're the guy looking for action. Is that your fault? Is that just war? I don't know. So my replacement was killed. My team leader was killed. I went to his funeral. And then I get a phone call, and they're like, hey, man, we need you to come back over here. And then we lost a helicopter. I was supposed to go to the Tikrit team, and the Tikrit team was on a helicopter that got shot down, and they videoed it. Only one guy survived, the pilot, and they executed him, right there at the crash site. And that was the team I was going to. And so, you're sitting there running your mouth like, oh, I want to go to war. And well, here it is. This is war. Helicopters get shot down. Your replacement gets killed, and it's not over. It's just starting. So, I got on a plane, showed up in Baghdad, and they call out your name, or call sign Tadpole. You're going to Ramadi. And I'm like, never heard of Ramadi. Had kind of an ominous sound. And I asked somebody, I said, man, have you ever heard of Ramadi? He's like, oh, yeah, I've heard of Ramadi, man. It's fucking hot. Is that where you're going? I was like, yeah, I guess so. He's like, good luck, man. Good luck. Got to Ramadi, and I was fortunate. They put me as the limo driver because it's the safest job. You're going to draw the most fire because there's no doubt where the boss is. So they're trying to shoot at you. But I felt protected because everyone's trying to protect the limo, everyone on the team. And we had gun trucks and we had all this other stuff. But obviously what stands out was May 10th, 2005. We went to a meeting at the government center, and it was supposed to be 30 minutes long, and the interpreter refused to go with us. That was indicator number one. The 30-minute meeting turned into several hours. The team leader started rotating people out, and then I'm sitting there in the limo in the air conditioner, in the air-conditioned car, doing nothing. And all these guys are out there on security positions. So he started rotating guys, and he rotated me over to a tower. I bumped the 18 Delta. He went inside, I think, with the boss, and I'm up there with Tommy Jakner, who I knew from Al Hilla. And me and Tommy are, in the tower, providing overwatch, security for the compound. And any number of things happen. You hear shots here and there. You hear explosions. Little, cracks go over the, not right over your head, but you can tell every now and then someone's taking a shot at you. And you see movement like what you and I would say fire team movement out in the city. And you're just like, man, what's going on here? You know, something's going on. And, you know, you're just trying to come up with a plan. And then, I heard a shot. What I know is a shot now. I knew it was a shot then. I just didn't know exactly what it was. And then Tommy, who is closer to me than you are right now, he fell over backwards and he just kind of was staring up in the sky. And it all happened so quick, you know, man. It was just, what the hell just happened? You know, and you're looking at him like, what just happened? I mean, you can't, it sounds so obvious now, but at the time, man, you're trying to piece everything together. Paul Fondren, one of the other my teammates, he was coming up in the tower and he saw it. And lucky for me, you know, unlucky for him that he had been in, you know, combat before, I guess. But lucky for me, he had seen it before and he knew what was coming next. He knew what had just happened. He yelled, "Sniper, get down!" And I dove for cover. And that obviously saved my life. A follow-up shot was made. A crack went over my head, which I assume is the follow-up shot, because I was just too tempting of a target. You know, I mean, I'm just sitting there staring at Tommy on the ground. But Tommy had been shot through the neck. He had binos, and then he put the binos down, and the round wound up going through the wrist and then into the neck. And he was killed instantly. And then we were pinned down for, I don't know, 30 minutes. Just everything erupted, man. It was a giant shitstorm. Paul got on the radio and said, you know, Tommy's down. Bama's been killed. And then it's like a final protective fire, because that's how you initiate the ambush. As I read some of the citations from the Marines that were there that day, they talk about machine gun teams and burst of fire. So everyone kind of figured out, okay, they're trying to take this compound. They're trying to take the government center. And there was probably 12 of us, 20 or 30 Marines, I don't know. And man, who knows how many of those guys. But they had the advantage for sure. And you know, they started bounding on the compound. I saw heroism for sure. 2 Marines and a corpsman ran into the tower. No cover, no anything. Just bullets going outbound and inbound. And they ran up there to render aid to Tommy. And the corpsman looked at me and just kind of said, "There's nothing I can do. He's gone. I'm sorry." And then they just, you know, ran back out and got in the gunfight. I've recently been put in contact with those guys. I just want to thank them for what they did that day. It's the most heroic thing I've ever seen in my life. Tommy was he was the funny guy on the team. Everybody has a comedian. He was a comedian, and man, he was fearless. I'd screwed up about a month before. Man, I dinged up the limo. It was an honest mistake, but the vehicle was down for repairs, and it was my fault. And we get down to Baghdad, and luckily we didn't have the principal with us. It was just us, and the team leader was pissed because now we can't do operations, you know. And he calls me in front of the team, and he's like, "All right, Tadpole, we got you a car. It's a thin-skin Corolla. You're going to drive it back to Ramadi. You're going to give it to the OGA guys, and they'll owe us a favor. We're going to do them this favor, and you're the guy that's going to drive it." And I was like, "Yeah, man, roger that." I said, "Thin skin." He goes, "Yeah, thin skin. You're going to drive a Ramadi in a thin skin because you tore up the limo." And I'm thinking, yeah, man, I deserve that. You know, who else is going to drive it? It's my fault. We don't have a limo, so I'm going to drive the thin skin. I said, all right, man, I'll just follow you guys. He goes, oh, no, man, you can't keep up with us. We're going to be hauling ass, dude. We're doing 100 miles an hour. That thing won't do 100 miles an hour. You're just going to have to fucking get it back there. So now I'm getting nervous, right? I'm like, fuck, I'm by myself driving a fucking Ramadi. Like, all right, well, you know, I'm going to need a GPS and a radio. And he goes, man, he's like, hey, man, you fucked up. You tore up the limo. You know, you figure it out. And I was like, fuck, man, I don't want to look like a pussy in front of these guys. You know what I mean? I'm the one that, you know, tore up the limo. But he looks around the room and he's like, maybe you can talk one of these guys and go in with you. And I'm looking around, everybody's looking down at me because, I mean, hey, dude, who wants to do that? Yeah. Seats taken, you know, whatever. But Tommy Jakner, man, Tommy Bama Jakner. And he's kind of a big guy. He stands up and he's got a saw, you know, with like a, you know, 200 round belt. I mean, he looks like a Rambo movie. And he looks around at everybody. He's like, I'll go with you, Tadpole. Fuck these people, man. We'll kill anybody that fucks with us. Let's get it on, you know. And then the team leader's like, okay, that did not go in the direction I thought it was. And he's like, nah, man, I'm just fucking with you. And he threw me the keys to an armored Suburban or something. He goes, man, I didn't think you had the balls to pull that off. He goes, but I see that somebody in this room does. But that was Tommy Jakner, man. He was just, he was funny. He was fearless. He was just one of those guys that you want on your side. And I mean, it was a hell of a loss, you know, when he was killed. Yeah. This time during Ramadi was just, you know, this was the beginning of the insurgency. And talking to AJ Pashuti, which I know you've had on, we've talked about that day, and he's seen the video because it was recorded and used as a recruiting video, propaganda or whatever by Al Qaeda, and he believes there's a very good chance that was Juba, and of course, he was sent on the hunt to find Juba, and it took him a couple years, but eventually he did find him. He killed him, and his spotter killed his spotter. And that rifle, which had been taken from a Marine team a year prior, he wound up donating or getting that into the Marine Corps Museum. So it's very, very likely that the rifle in the Marine Corps Museum was the rifle that killed Tommy and almost killed me. Juba was the most effective enemy sniper Americans have faced on the battlefield since Vietnam. I don't know the names of the snipers in Vietnam. I know that Carlos Hathcock killed his equivalent sniper. I don't know that person's name, and I know that there's been books about that and whatnot. In Iraq, there were a lot of rumors about who he was and where he was from. Was he Iraqi? Was he Syrian Special Forces? Was he? I don't know. AJ might know that. I don't know, but he was credited with well over 100 kills. The movie about Chris Kyle said that Chris Kyle killed him. It was actually AJ Pashuti. Chris Kyle definitely, you know, was a very effective sniper, and you know, there's no telling. I don't know how many guys he was credited with, but he didn't kill Juba. AJ killed Juba, and that's not a ding on anybody or anything like that. I just think AJ should get the credit that he deserves, because, like I said, that rifle is in the Marine Corps Museum. You know, I mean, it's just so crazy to think that might. It's probably the rifle that killed Tommy Jakner and
almost killed you.
Almost killed me. Yeah. A lot of close calls, a lot of crazy stuff. You know, I found a Marine one night. He had been, so there was a dust storm and some Marines came in our compound and asked for help locating this individual who was missing. And obviously we all volunteered, but I volunteered and I ran out the back gate and I don't know why it was me that found him, just coincidence. But this individual was sitting against a tree, and his eyes were going back and forth in his head, and he wasn't responsive when I tried to talk to him. And then the 18 Delta came up, and I knew he could assess him, better than I can. I just said, "What do you need?" He goes, "Go back to the car and get the med kit." So I ran back to the car, got the med kit, came back. Man, it took less than a minute. I said, "What do you need out of the med kit?" And he goes, "Man, nothing. He's dead, man." So what had happened was a rocket had come in and hit the top of the chapel, and the frag went out. It knocked me out of my chair. I was 50 meters away from the rocket, and nothing hit me. No, it knocked me out of my chair, but nothing hit me. The Marine was 75 meters away. He was further away than I was. A small fragment went through his rib cage and pierced his heart, and he bled out internally. And they couldn't find that until he got to the cache, and they opened him up, and they saw that's what happened. So here's a situation where I'm closer to the blast than he is, and nothing happens to me, and he gets killed, and it's just one of those freak things. And then to add to that, some 10 years later, I'm in the National Guard in South Carolina, and I hear a guy in front of me telling a story about a rocket attack and, this, that, and the other. And I asked the guy, I didn't know the guy. I just said, "Hey, man, where was that?" He goes, "Ramadi." I said, what year?" He goes, 2005. I said, "So you were in the Marines before you were in the Guard?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "So you ran into the Blackwater compound during a dust storm, and you asked guys to help find a Marine, and they found a Marine, and he had been killed?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "That was me, man. I'm the guy. And I showed him the pictures. So he was one of the 3 Marines who ran into the compound asking for help. And 10 years later, we're in the National Guard on a drill weekend. A line of 200 people waiting to go to chow, and he's right in front of me, and he's telling that story at that time. What are the chances? Oh, wow. I got a picture of him, man. His name's Wells. We took a picture, man, and just crazy, man. Just crazy stuff. Ramadi was crazy, man. And it never stopped being crazy. I spent a year with Blackwater, and I realized I needed to take the next step. I needed to find some other way to go to war, something that was more proactive, something that was where I could capitalize on my background being a recon guy. And someone told me about the special programs. And so the intelligence community had what they called the special programs. They were looking for former special op guys. You had to have 8 years of special operations experience, at least 1 combat deployment. And then someone on that program had to vouch that you weren't a, wife beater or alcoholic or, whatever. And if you met that criteria, then you could submit your application. And then they started going through the background and the vetting and all that. And like, it was just this funnel of people you would think would kind of make it for whatever reason and got cut for whatever reason. And this is before you go to selection. So, man, got lucky, right place, right time, and was in good shape, and I could shoot, and everything worked out. And then I find myself being offered a selection date. I went to the selection course, which some people have said is the hardest shooting in the U.S. government. That's, what some of the internet famous people are saying who were on that program. And I spent 12 years with the special programs, and man, I loved every minute of it. It was definitely the hardest shooting I've ever done in my life. There were a lot of, it kind of reminded me of the Marine, the amphibious reconnaissance school, in the sense that there's no yelling or berating, and it was all scenarios, meaning, because it was created by the Tier 1 guys, and it was all Tier 1 cadre that ran the course. And So I thought there was going to be like this, 50-mile road march. I'm preparing for just fucking, Delta selection. And I got there, and there was some physical stuff, but it was just scenarios, man. It was thinking. Everything was about thinking, while shooting, while moving, while communicating. I mean, it was just, it was awesome. I loved it. As hard as it was, and as many people that had great resumes that didn't make it, and again, man, no ding on them. It worked out for me. But man, I loved it. I just loved it, man. I loved the mission. I loved the training. I loved the people. It was great. But yeah, it was definitely the hardest shooting I've ever done in my entire life. It was, I would say, primarily surveillance and counter surveillance. That was the bread and butter. Now, it depended on where you went. If you went to like a major city, there was a lot of close protection type stuff, low profile of like the intelligence officers. And I'm not saying that's not important, but that's not what I really wanted. Now I would do that, and you have to do that. You're going to do a rotation into like a Kabul or a Baghdad or whatever. But man, I like being in the outlying places where you were just doing full on, man, you might be one guy or two guys out there in bad guy land, collecting information, man. And it's just like the stakes are high, obviously, but man, this is what you want to do, man. This is what you signed up for, right? I mean, who's doing this, man? You didn't have a lot of support, which was also part of it. The pay was very good. The lifestyle was, like I said, man, we've had a lot of people, commit, suicide since then, unfortunately. But man, the missions, I loved it, man. Like I said, you were hanging it out there, but you could see the benefit to what you were doing in real time, versus a lot of the military stuff was like, you just do it because somebody told you to do it. This, you saw that in real time, man. You knew exactly what you were doing. Now, the kind of the downside, I guess, and it's not for everybody. And if you went there and you walked away, I'm not saying you're a bad person, but you have to deal with bad people. So you're trying to get information to be used against the enemy. And who has that information? The enemy has that information. So not you personally, the intelligence officer, they're in charge of finding a person who is likely or who could sell you the information. And what my guys did was the tactical planning and operation in actually getting to that person. And you have to come up with enterprising ways to do it. And you were given a lot of autonomy. And when I went to the Army late, I was like, dude, you get treated like a kid over on that side. But with the special programs, man, we had our own satellite, man. We had our own plane getting us back and forth. I mean, it was, the stakes were high. You were treated well, but they were very demanding. The missions were very demanding, and because the stakes were so high. Remember, this is before they knew where bin Laden was. Well, how do you think you found bin Laden? Because the special programs guys were out there doing this stuff, and I'm not saying I had anything to do with bin Laden. I would say I had maybe a little bit to do with finding Zarqawi, because it was all in the Anbar province, which was Ramadi. So I was not in, obviously, on the raid or anything that killed Zarqawi. But man, my guys played a big part in that, finding him. Because like I said, you're finding a person who's willing to sell you information, and you have to go and either meet them or corner them or make it look like they were kidnapped, or give them some type of cover for action, cover for status, to get them over here where you can talk to them, but nobody can see you talking to them. I mean, it was a lot of cat and mouse, spy versus spy kind of shit, man. You know what I mean? And I loved it, man. It was fucking awesome. And I don't mean this like degrading to the military or anything like that. Or I'm just telling you my experience. I was shot at more by the Americans than I was by Al Qaeda or the Taliban, because You had to dress like them. You had to operate where they were operating. And in Ramadi, a lot of my job was deconflicting with air assets. And if you're out in the middle of the desert and everything's camouflaged, but maybe there's, a couple of guys in a hide site or whatever, and there's a F-18 or an Apache with a FLIR system, they picked you up and you see them turning towards you. You know what I mean? So, you get on the radio and you're like, hey man, deconflict, whatever. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not a ding on the American military. It's just that they're a hammer and they're looking for a nail, and you're kind of the scalpel, if you will. And I'm not comparing myself to the tier 1 guys, but they ran the program because we worked directly for them, and a lot of them would come over. There's a lot of tier 1 guys on that program, so you knew this was a really awesome place to be. I told a story about there's weapons buyback programs, and I think everybody has them. Certain weapons you want to pay big money to get them off the market. And I was involved with recovering a Stinger missile, who I think it was traced back to the early 80s. And this is before I found out about Flipper 75. The Pentagon has said that Flipper 75 was shot down by an American missile. It was an American Chinook. And then a couple of years later, it happened again. So there are at least 2 Chinooks, U.S. Army, they were shot down by American missiles. And, that's a whole other conversation. But I did play a small part in recovering one of them, or getting that off the battlefield, the launcher anyway. So I was very proud of that.
How are you able to work yourself into that culture? Because they're not dumb, right? Yeah, like without them knowing, like, this guy isn't one of us.
What you do, a lot of groundwork is laid before you get there. Okay, and you have a professional intelligence officer who has spent over a year of their life in training just how to talk to people, just how to convince them to do things, using the Force or, the Jedi mind trick. So that's kind of like step 1 is this person, this intel guy. And he has a list of people who have been cooperating, for example. And again, and this is where it gets murky. And some people kind of don't like this. Man, it is what it is. You have to associate with bad guys. That's the way this game is played. You have to associate with bad guys. So you know who all the bad guys are. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the biggest bad guy, if that makes sense. So, and again, man, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just telling you how the game is played. You're dealing with people who have definitely shot at Americans before. I wish there was I had something better to tell you, but that's just how the game is played, because they know the big players. So the intelligence officer has what we'll call an asset, and he provides information, and he gives that person money. Now, the actual physical giving, that's where we come in, because we carry the guns, right? We do the planning, we do the operations, but he's kind of the guy that does the legwork, if you will. Now, he might have to go out from time to time, and you do protect that guy. That's true. But generally speaking, you're the tactical side of it. He's the guy making stuff happen. And he knows that, say, Bob has sold us information before, and Bob's a bad guy. But Bob doesn't know why this bridge got blown up, or why rockets are landing in this place, and we've got to shut it down. We've got to shut that shit down. Maybe if I talk to Bob, he knows someone who knows someone. So now you're starting to, that's where the intel officer, that's what he's doing. So again, he's the one doing the legwork. You're doing the actual going out, doing stuff, but he does the legwork. So he finds this person, and let's just say, Ralph. Ralph is one of the facilitators for the guy shooting the rockets in. And maybe Ralph likes, girls or booze or drugs or whatever. So the intel officer starts talking to, Ralph, and, he doesn't tell him who he is up front, right? Now, you can probably imagine that they're going to know you're a Westerner. They may not know you're an American, but they know you're a Westerner. You're obviously a Caucasian or a black guy in some cases, or a female in some cases. So, but eventually the intel officer builds rapport with this guy, and at some point he pitches him. He says, "Man, I would really like for you to work for me, and I can make these." He's got problems, right? His brother's in prison, or his daughter is, whatever. Well, he's got access to all this money, right? Because we're paying for information, right? So the intel officer says, "Hey, man, look, I'm not asking you to sell out your buddy, but man, if you could just tell me next time he gets a shipment of rockets, or next time he's going to shoot at an American base, I would like to, dissuade him or something. If you can tell me something, I'll give you money," right? So it's this long, and it takes a long time to do all this stuff. But eventually you get to the point where this guy's working for you, and guys like me, will go out there and pick him up. Hey, he's going to be on the corner of wherever, and he's got a black briefcase in his left hand, and if it's in his right hand, just drive by, because that's the danger signal. But so you got all this bona fide stuff, and you pick the guy up, and maybe you're driving a cab, and you're dressed like a local, and you got a guy in the back in a burqa, but he's got a saw and a grenade launcher under the, you know what I mean? Like you're doing all this cool stuff, but the outsider looking in, it doesn't draw attention. It doesn't draw much attention theoretically. He gets in, you take him back to the base, and then they interrogate him or meet with him and then give him money. And so that's kind of how it goes. Now, that's one example. It doesn't always go that way. It could go that way. You got other techniques, but generally speaking, you've got a professional intelligence officer who has spent a year of their life in training learning how to talk to people and convince them to do something they would not normally do. And then when it comes to going outside the wire, conducting the operation, that's where, my guys would, that's where we would come in. So I'm not getting information from the guy. I'm just going and grabbing this guy or whatever. This person is convincing them to do that. So it's, and then you got SIGINT, and you got all this other stuff. But generally that's how it goes. I got a funny story, which I put in the book. It's been I just can't tell you who he was, but it was I put it in the book. I was like, man, they're not going to let me tell this. They fucking approved it. It's in the, and I'll tell you that story if you want to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we had, this was, like I said, you don't have the training or the skill set. Not that you can't do it, but there's this 1 in a million process type thing that you have to do to get information from these people, because you might only have one chance to pitch these guys. So it has to be done by this intelligence officer who has the training and experience. Now, on rare occasions, you might be the guy, man, you know what I mean? So I hope you've been paying attention, during all this meetings and briefings. I was in Kabul, Afghanistan. I was in the team room, and the phone rang, and I was the only guy in there. And I'm like, hey, team room, whatever. And I'm like, hey, dude, what you got going on? Nothing. I'm sitting there playing Halo. Jock up, put on your gear, and fucking go over to the embassy. You're going to talk to the Marine there. Tell him you're Tadpole from OGA. You're approved to go single because normally they want you to go one other person. He goes, you're approved to go single person, one vehicle, go over there by yourself. He's going to tell you what's going on. You're going to sit on a guy. And if you choose to talk to him and you get some information, you're cleared hot. Use your best judgment. I'm like, man, you got any more information? He goes, nope, you're the guy. Fucking make it happen, man. Fucking, this is serious shit. And I'm like, well, yeah, it always is. So I'm like, roger that, man. So I put on my body armor and my vest and everything, grabbed my rifle, went down, got a car, drove over to the embassy, went to the I think it was MSG guys, said, man, I'm Tadpole from OGA, and you got something for me? They're like, yeah, man, you want an interpreter? I'm like, let's just pretend like I have no fucking idea what's going on here, man. Can you kind of read me in? He goes, yeah, this dude just walked in and said he wanted to meet you guys and he has information. He was sent here to kill. And I put it in the book. I'm not allowed to say who he was going to kill. I am not allowed to say where he was from. But I said, okay, roger that. Yeah, I'll talk to him. And again, I'm not an intelligence officer. Our job was more of a paramilitary type job, you know what I'm saying? So we would be with the intel guys, but like that interrogations and stuff, that's not my bag. But evidently this guy had gotten attention and they wanted somebody there and I'm the guy. So, hey man, make it fucking happen. Don't embarrass your team, right? So anyway, I meet the guy and man, he's got these cold black eyes, bro. I mean, he looked like a shark. This dude was a killer, a murderer. But he was a really calm, cool guy. Like I got along with him on a personal level, you know what I mean? And you know, man, I had an interpreter there. The Marines had or maybe it was the State Department. I had an interpreter so I could talk to the guy. And they're trying to scramble back at my team room. They're scrambling, trying to get the guys over here that can do this. So I was with the guy for like 30 minutes, man. And, I'm just making small talk and trying to remember what he says and being nice. He offers me a cigarette, which is common in that culture. And I declined it, but I offered him a lighter. I used to carry a lighter because that's how I'd meet girls in the bars. You always light a cigarette for the girl. That's how you start the conversation. So anyway, but in that culture, you always have a lighter because everybody smokes. So I politely declined the cigarette, but I lit his cigarette. So I'm building rapport, right? I got that down at least. So we get to talking, man. And, he's like I said, we're just making small talk through the interpreter. And I'm asking if I can get him anything to eat. And yeah, I got some people coming to talk to him and they'll take care of him. You can't make any promises. You want the promises to be open-ended because you don't know if you can deliver on those promises. And then if you make a promise and you can't deliver, you've just kind of burned that bridge. So it's real just vanilla type shit that you're saying to this guy. But anyway, like I said, man, I felt like I built rapport. The guy seemed pretty cool. And, he asked for protection and I said, man, we'll absolutely do our best. Like I said, I can't make any promises because I'm not the guy. I'm here and the guy that makes that call is up here. So anyway, the intel officer comes over and she's got her interpreter and like another interrogator or whatnot. And they're all real young. You got to remember there's a high turnover rate in special operations, the intelligence community, any of these high demand, jobs or MOSs, man, there's just a high turnover rate because the op tempo is just so fucking high, especially during GWAT. And this person's right out of an Ivy League school and right out of training, and she's doing her best, and they're all doing their best. But man, they're amateurs, and you can tell by the way the conversation's going. And I'm like, man, this isn't going well, and this dude's losing interest. Well, long story short, he was an assassin. He was contracted by the Taliban to come over and kill, like I said, I can't say who, but a extremely high-level person, extremely high level. And he's a professional, man, a professional. And he figured out they were setting him up for failure, so he was going to get killed during the assassination attempt. He was either going to kill him and they were going to kill him, or he would get killed by the security forces protecting this person at the embassy or wherever. So he's like, nah, fuck that dude. So he came to us like, hey, I'll tell you who these people are, where they are, etc. And you give me money and protection and understand I didn't kill your guy. You know what I mean? So anyway, like I said, the conversation was kind of going south, man. This, like I said, man, they were young and inexperienced and they just weren't making it happen. And, you could tell the dude was fidgeting and getting pissed off, and he would look at me like he wanted me to intervene. And which is, it's really weird because it's like you have more in common with the bad guy in this scenario, you know what I mean, than you do with your people. but you have to pick their side. It's kind of conflicting because I get what the dude is pissed. He's with a fucking amateur and he's a professional. I get it. I see your point, but I got to pick my guy. I got to pick my team, and it's just kind of that conflict. So anyway, he finally gets down to the. He says, "Look, I'm going to set these dudes up. We're going to an internet cafe. There's 12 of them. They're bad guy, Taliban, high-level dudes. They'll be in the internet cafe. I'll send you a signal, and then guys like him," he pointed at me, he goes, "guys like him are going to come in and kill him." And I was like, fuck, that's a great goddamn plan. I hope this gets, because this sounds like a cool mission that I get to do. Middle of the day, I'm running through the fucking internet cafe smoking Taliban dudes. Fuck yeah, man. Hope this gets approved. So man, she's looking at her little group of people and looking at him, and they're all talking through the interpreter because he doesn't speak English. And she goes, well, I can't take on 12 Taliban in the middle of the city, and the interpreter tells him, and he throws his hands up, and then he says something, and then the interpreter's like, well, why the hell did you invade Afghanistan? So man, I start laughing because that's the funniest thing I've heard in a long, you know what I mean? It's so ridiculous. That is such a government bullshit thing to say. I can't take on 12 Taliban in the middle of the city. Dude, I can do it with a pistol. You know what I mean? I mean, with a rifle, but you see what I'm saying, right? So I start laughing, which is unprofessional, but it was funny, man. So I was like, oh fuck, I just torpedoed her. She's trying to do her thing. And about that time, man, I get like a phone call. We had the little burner phones, or it was a radio call, and they're like, hey, Tadpole, call back, or we got a replacement coming over to bump you, because I'd been there a couple hours. And I was like, oh, fuck, I hope they didn't hear me laughing. Because, like I said, unprofessional, but man, that was funny. So I bumped with, I think it was Tally that came and bumped me. Anyway, I go back over there, and I'm like, well, good luck or whatever. And I literally just rolled through the gate, and I can't say who the person was, but a very high-level person walks right up to my car, says, man, I need you to go upstairs right fucking now and talk to the boss. I'm like, roger that. I was like, let me put my gear up. He goes, I'll take your, and this is like the boss of the boss of the boss, and he's taking my gear to go put it up for me. That's how important it is that I make immediate. So I'm like, fuck, dude, I'm in trouble. I fucked up somehow. And I go in there, man, and it's the, I can't say the name of this person's position. That was one of the things in the book. I couldn't use the titles, but he was the commander of all these special programs going on in that country. So he is about as high, he's as high up as you can go. Higher than a 4-star, if you will, right? So I go into, and I knew I'd been on his detail for a couple of weeks, which is another story. And I knew the guy's, his call sign was Uncle Buck. I was like, hey, Uncle Buck, how's it going? Tadpole, you wanted to see me? He's like, hey, Tadpole, come on in, man, talk to me. And there's like these dudes in suits, and they all were like writing and stuff, and they looked like very unhappy, serious people. And I'm just like, fuck, aisle or window, I'm waiting for the, their shoe to drop, But man, he just asked me about the meeting and everything and what the guy said and what did I think. Who gives a shit what I think? He wanted to know what I thought. And I told him everything I thought and, blah, blah, blah. And he looks at those guys and they all kind of nod. And he stood up and he shook my hand. He goes, man, you did a great fucking job. You did a great fucking job. That was not in your purview. You fucking did great. You guys are awesome. I'm so glad you guys are talking about the special programs, guys, because it wasn't always contentious, but it wasn't always friendly with the intel folks. But that bought us a lot of credit. What I did, I mean, me, but it could have been anybody that did it. But anyway, he shook my hand and said, man, you did a great fucking job, man. I'm glad you guys are here. And I walked outside. And I felt like he wanted to talk to me at some point later, or I wanted to hang out just in case they had questions. So I hung out. Like an hour or so later, as soon as I walked out the door, I see these dudes just kind of not running, but walking through the hall with purpose. And they were high-level intel guys. I was like, what the fuck's going on? Well, they were going over there. Well, they were going to boot the fucking B team out, and they were going to take it. That's how high up this fucking dude was. And you don't get guys like this every day. You see what I'm saying? And they didn't want to drop the ball because he was like next level shit, right? So they go over there, and I, like I said, I kind of hung out in case they had more questions. Well, I see, the girl and those guys come in, man, they go in the office, and I can't hear what's going on inside the office, But, about 30 minutes later, the door opened. They came out, and they were staring down at the ground. And you can't fire a federal employee, and you can't fire an active duty military guy. You can't fire him, but you can give him a shit job. You can put him on the bench. And that's what happened, man. They got fucking benched. And it's not really their fault because they were new. You see what I'm saying? But by the same token, man, the fucking stakes in that game are just so fucking high. You know what I mean? So I did feel bad for those guys because they kind of fucked up. But it wasn't really their fault. They were,
Why would they send new people on this guy that they know is so high level?
They didn't know. See, here's the thing about a walk-in. When you vet a source of information, it takes a long time to vet a source of information. This guy was what they call a walk-in. He just walks in the embassy and says, I have information and I want money. Now, that's usually a red flag. Some guy's full of shit. 9 times out of 10, they'll come down there, they'll listen to this guy for 5 or 10 minutes. They'll be like, this guy doesn't know a fucking thing. But they'll give him some money, something small, $100, whatever. Like, hey, thanks, man. If you got anything, man, give me a call. Yeah, I need something better. You know what I mean? And send them on their way. 9 times out of 10, that's what happens. This just happened to be one of those unusual situations where the guy is legitimate, 100% legitimate, and his only option is to walk into the embassy and throw his hands up and say, hey, man, I got some information and I want some money. So they didn't take him seriously, and the historical precedent for that is you don't take those guys seriously. You see what I'm saying? So it kind of wasn't their fault, man, but at the end of the day, man, you got to figure if the highest ranking dude in a country is probably getting phone calls, he's pissed off and shit rolls downhill, So, but he was glad with my performance, which means he was glad with our performance, my guys. And like I said, man, that helped my reputation, you know what I mean? So, because every day is selection in that community. You got to earn your spot every day, and I earned it for a couple more days. There was an operation early on. We'll just say the first operation in Afghanistan.
And I'm sorry to add context. The guy you're talking about is the guy that this dude was going to come assassinate.
I can't say who this person was going to assassinate. That they just said I'm not allowed to say that.
Okay, yeah, but the person to whose detail you're on,
he was the commander of all special programs in that country.
Gotcha.
And he rated a detail which was, I'd say, very small compared to, say, if you were to ever see a 4-star general's PSD or an ambassador's detail, they got 20 cars and gunships and all this other happy horse shit. It's like the fucking, Pope or something going through town. But for this guy, it was, I guess I can't say a very, very much smaller than that. It would, the special programs, the idea was you draw the least amount of attention to yourself. That was our bag. Now, other people, like I said, the State Department or the, conventional side military, they roll heavy. That's not what we did. And I think we had a better success rate than them. That's just my opinion. But, so I was on the guy's detail, really cool guy. And like I said, he had been in the very first operation, and I don't know how much I can say about that, but there was an operation where the first people that went into Afghanistan after September 11th, he was one of the guys. If you've seen the movies or read the books or whatever about, what happened immediately after September 11th in Afghanistan. He was one of those guys. But we had I was giving another recon Marine a local area orientation. He was just off. I think he had been with First Force, and he comes over to the special programs. So he knows what he's doing. He just has to do it our way. And we're doing a local area orientation. I'm showing him the city basically. He's driving, and I'm kind of giving him. Long story short, man, this we get hit by this car, and I'm thinking it's an ambush, but it's actually just a guy shaking us down for money. And so, man, we're driving through the city, man, like a scene out of Bullet, with Steve McQueen, man. It was crazy, man. And TJ is his name, or his call sign. Doing a great job as a driver. I'm like, yeah, brother, you pass everything, man. You're ready to go, man, because this is a real deal. We get out to the airport road. I put my rifle out on him, like, hey, back the fuck off. And the reason I didn't shoot him, because people asked me why I didn't kill him. I didn't kill him because I saw him, after he hit us, he threw his wife out of his car. So he was protecting her in the event I shoot into the vehicle. So I'm like, okay, he's not a bad guy. He's just a dipshit trying to get money because he sees a nice Land Cruiser, and that's why he hit it. He didn't hit us because he's a Taliban and we're American. He hit us because we got a Land Cruiser and he's trying to get money. So that's why I didn't kill him. But he's chasing us around. I'm like, okay, I got to do something. So anyway, we scrub him through the embassy. They wouldn't let him in, but he tells the gate guards that, we owe him money for a car crash. And fucking State Department, man. Jeez, oh my God. Anyway, they're like, well, we can't let you go because we got to do an investigation. I'm like, hey, brother, I'm a GS-15. I had an ID that said I was a GS-15. I'm like, man, I'm GS-15, man. You can't hold me here. Oh, well, yeah, we can. We're the U.S. embassy or whatever. I'm like, all right. So I called back to the QRF and everything, and it goes all the way up to Uncle Buck. Like I said, the head guy whose detail I'd been on. And if I have not explained how high up the food chain this guy is, let me reiterate how fucking high up the food chain he is. He calls the ambassador, and the ambassador calls the RSO, the regional security officer. And I see this fucking nerd-looking dude in a suit come walking down. He's like, and we got this shitty, Haji Dub car. And he knocks on the window, and he's like, "Are you Mr. Tadpole?" And I was like, yeah. He goes, you're free to go, Mr. Tadpole. I'm sorry about the confusion, and he yells at the Marines or whoever. He's like, hey, let them go, man. They're Americans, or whatever. So they let us go. And I get back over to the compound, and I'm like, all right, well, are they going to be mad I didn't kill the guy? Or are they going to be mad? You know what I mean? Like, there's all these scenarios because there's snipers are everywhere. Everybody's trying to fucking tell you how you did a shitty job and they would have done a better job. But we get over there, man, and I'm ready for either the ass chewing or the whatever. Well, here comes Uncle Buck out the front door, and all the minions are out there, getting ready to sharpshoot me, I assume. And he's like, Tadpole, man, I just got off the phone with Karzai. And he said he needs a copy of your license and your insurance policy or something like. And man, everybody starts laughing. So he took a serious situation and made light of it, which was just kind of his character. Man, he was a great leader, just a really good guy. When I was in the bar business, man, I met a girl. Like I said, I was a bouncer. She was a stripper. And, we started dating, and then we wound up getting married. And obviously a very tumultuous marriage. And I was gone a lot. And, do the math. I'm not going to say it was all her fault. I'm not going to say it was all my fault. But if someone is trying to get ahead, they're trying to get ahead. And I would say a lot of times strippers just want to be strippers, man. They don't want you to save them. And that's the easiest way to say that. So I was married, she wasn't dancing when we were married. She was when I was dating, but, she had a pill problem. She had some other problems. I was trying to make the marriage work. I'm sure in her mind, she was trying to make the marriage work. We just weren't compatible, man. And to be honest, man, it was easier to go to war than it was to try to be married in some situations.
Yeah. So just a little bit on that, I've heard people talk about war as a drug and stuff. And, where are you with that at this point in your career? Is this like, how are you feeling when you're back home and compared to when you're out doing an operation and living, the operational like day to day, being deployed and stuff like that?
Yeah, the war is a drug, absolutely. It is your identity. It's your identity. It's your. There's just so much to it. It's. That's a simple way to say it, but it encapsulates kind of the feeling. There's. I wish it weren't like this, man. But I'm just telling you how it is, man. It's everything you want to do. It's important. It's necessary. It's prestigious. It gives you purpose. It's all of these things, man. And if you're at that level where you can make decisions, I mean, it's the ultimate game of chess, bro. I mean, it's life or death, and nothing else comes close. And you can't do it forever, but by God, man, you will chase the dragon forever and ever. And the biggest thing about one big thing about our community that no one really wants to admit. I don't mind saying it. Deep down, the issue that drives all of us is that you never want the ride to end. That's the secret. Nobody wants the ride to end. If I got a phone call right now to go to, Gaza and rescue hostages or something, I'd do it, man. I mean, I wouldn't do it, but I'd do it. You see what I'm saying? Nobody wants the ride to end, but I knew I had the advantage of knowing that the ride will end because it ended for me in the 90s when I was a Force Recon guy that never went to war with the Marines, and then it ended. So I've seen this movie before. So when GWAT came around, I knew that there would be an end one day, and I needed to prepare for that. Whereas other guys didn't because that was their first time riding the dragon, So coming home, man, it's just not the same. You just nothing gets you out of bed, man. I mean, I wish that were not the case, but it is, man. Nothing gets you up in the morning. Nothing makes you want to do anything, man. Because you've done life and death. Life and death will motivate you. If it's not life and death, you don't care, man. Like I said, I knew the special programs was not going to last forever for me because of age and things of that nature. We started to get guys who had been on a Bin Laden raid show up on the team. And so I felt like, what do I have to teach? What do I have to give back? If these guys are showing up, type of a thing. I found out I still wanted to be around these people. You know what I mean? And so it was, how can I stay around these people, still be operational? And that's when I found out about the warrant officer program in the Army. So I went to the recruiter. Man, I told him my story, and he was like, look, man, you missed it. You're too old for the Army, but the National Guard can take you, and they give you an age waiver. So that's what I did. I went to the Georgia Army National Guard, told them my story. They got me in. I went to flight school. I was the oldest guy to graduate flight school. I was 39. I was older than the battalion commander, which was funny. I immediately deployed as a dust-off pilot. Learned a great deal. My first real deal 9-line medevac was a sniper shot. A guy was in a gunner position on an MRAP, and he took a round to the head, and the helmet slowed it down. And that was important to me because of Tommy being shot by a sniper, and then the first person I evacuate off the battlefield has been shot by a sniper. The Army puts you on duty for 24 hours at a time. I don't agree with that because I fly EMS on my civilian job, and it's 12 hours, and you can devote more attention. But anyway, you're on duty for 24 hours, and they want you to be rested. And a 9-line medevac, at the time, a 9-line could come in any capacity. It could come in on a phone, a radio, an email. They didn't do that on my last deployment, which we'll talk about if you want to. But so 9-line, the NATO format, non-line medevac comes in. It goes to a TOC. You got an operations guy with you, and he reads it, and then he keys the radio, keys the mic on the radio, and says medevac, medevac, medevac. And I'm telling you, man, nothing in my life has given me more of an adrenaline fucking flow than hearing that on a fucking radio. Nothing, man. Because someone out there is in their worst condition, the worst thing that can happen to them in their life. Now, if it's the enemy, maybe they can dominate the enemy. Or maybe you got Apaches, but for the most part, they can fend for themselves against an enemy. So if they're calling you for help, things are real fucking bad. And it was exciting, man. It was honestly, it was addictive. And I knew that I was helping people. And people would see you in the chow hall because you would wear like a medevac patch or whatever. And they'd be like, hey man, thank you, dude. Thank you for what you're doing. And you're like, man, I don't do shit. I fucking crank up a helicopter and push a couple buttons and I fucking land over here and the medic's doing stuff and the crew chief is doing stuff and the doctors are doing stuff. I'm not doing shit, but they love that you're there supporting them. And so it was my way to get back around the shooters and be around the shooters, even though I was too old to be a shooter, I could at least be around them. But anyway, you're on duty for 24 hours. Non-line comes in, and there's the pilot and there's the pilot in command. And the pilot's job, he's the junior guy. He runs out to the helicopter. He pulls the covers off or whatever, and usually the crew chief is helping. You give it to the crew chief. He's stuffing it in a bag or whatever, putting it in the back. You turn on the auxiliary power unit, and that gets electricity and everything, and you just start going through your process, and you get it up to engine start. And you might, with the Mike model, it's got a rotor brake, so you could start the engines and keep the brake on. They're at idle, they're not at fly, but you could start the engines. And so when the pilot in command, the PC comes out, he's got all the information. He's with the medic. They know where the LZ is. They have all this information. So you're just waiting for him to get on, and then you can crank the engines and get everything going. You're in charge of getting the helicopter ready to fly if you're the pilot. The pilot in command is managing the overall mission. I was a pilot on my first deployment. I was a pilot in command and a flight lead and an air mission commander on my second deployment. So you get the 9 line, you go up there, you crank up, everybody gets in, you take off. You're either, at the time you could fly single ship. You can't do that now, or you couldn't do it on my last deployment. You get out there, you make comms with the ground force commander, and he might tell you, hey man, we've got 8 MRAPs in a circle. We took sniper fire. And for this one, the op tempo was starting to slow down for people. So there are a lot of people looking for work. So out of nowhere, these 2 Apaches and these 2 F-16s come out, man. Like normally you don't get all this support. You know what I'm saying? It might just be you. So man, I got two Apaches and I got 2 F-16s, and they're mine, man. They belong to me. They're asking me what they can do, and I'm just like, fucking, hey man, how about a fucking show of force over in the fucking city? He's the sniper. He's still out there, And so these dudes come screaming in at 100 feet with the afterburners on, and it's like, man, this is your personal air show. And then you're like, hey, Apache, whatever, big gun 01 flight, possible sniper, 800 meters on a 030 radial from my position, can you get eyes on? And they're over there orbiting, man, just daring somebody to fuck with them, man. And it's your own personal air show, man. It's pretty cool. But we got this guy on board, and like I said, he had been in the gunner's hatch. He got hit, which means there's a pretty fucking talented sniper to hit a guy in the head on the move. You know what I mean? He fell down in the gunner's strap or whatever. The tactical commander saw it and saw that he was shot. It was like, fuck. So they went down the road a little bit, did a 360, called in a 9 line. We took him down to Kuwait, I think it was, or Basra. No, we flew him to Kuwait. We did what's called a tail-to-tail, which is one helicopter lands here, one lands here, and you take him from this helicopter to that one. None of us were deck landing qualified, so we didn't know the procedure on how to land on a ship. Now, my second deployment, everybody got deck landing qualified to work with the Navy. But at the time, we were flying to Kuwait. the Navy would come, Navy Blackhawk would come in. We'd put them on the Navy Blackhawk, and they would fly them out to the ship. And so that's how that worked. And like I said, man, there's nothing more. There's no greater adrenaline for me than hearing that radio crackle and just know that, man, somebody's in their worst time of their life, and you're the guy that's you're gonna help. You're part of a team, obviously, but you're going to help, man. So I did like it. I liked that a great deal. That was 2009.
Okay. In Iraq?
Iraq, yeah.
Yeah.
So the second deployment, like I said, I was a flight lead. I was air mission commander. I was piloting commands, and we only had one base in Iraq. Well, I want to say this the right way. ISIS had got into Mosul, and there was going to be a push into Mosul. And so the most likely scenarios for casualties were going to be handled by one base, and that was Erbil, and I got selected to go there. My standardization pilot wanted me to go there. Buddy who just had his birthday the other day, Andy Stevens, he wanted me to go there because of my experience. This was not a great deployment. There's some egos just across the board, but there are definitely some egos in aviation. In the Guard, it's very political, who gets a full-time job and who doesn't. And in this particular case, we were attached to the Florida Army National Guard, and I was a Georgia Guard guy. So my commander was from Florida, and some of the more senior guys were from Florida. And they ran the show, man, regardless of my experience and my background. And I had more experience than all these guys except for one guy who had just been picked up by the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. He had just been picked up, but he had to do his deployment, and then he could go back to them. And I forgot what that process is called. I think he did his assessment. He got selected. Then he does his deployment, then he goes back for a green platoon. I think is how that works. Anyway, he had more experience than me. Other than him, I had more experience than everybody. And I thought that was a good thing, and my commander didn't, because my commander thought that there was too much attention being given me, my experience. And he was just butthurt a lot of times. And you're like, bro, we're in the middle of combat. I mean, let's kind of get over high school or whatever happened to you before you got here. Okay, let's focus on the life and death stuff. He just couldn't get over it, man. He told me on my first day, he said, I didn't want you here. I wanted to bring one of my guys. The only reason you're here is because your standardization pilot, your SP went to my commander and insisted that I bring someone with combat experience here. And I was like, well, why would you not want to go to combat with someone with combat experience? Why I don't understand. But man, your boss is your boss, and you got to fucking do the job. And I knew that job was very important. We're the only medevac unit there. And I know that Mosul was going to be a really big fucking thing, and it was. So I knew how important it was to just, I don't know, it sounds egotistical, but I felt like I brought something to the table, and it was important that I be there. And I'm just going to have to deal with this guy's shit for 9 months. For 9 months, I'm going to sit here and have to work with a guy who told me to my face he doesn't want me there. I don't think it's classified to say that the only people in Syria at that time were the Delta dudes, and I think they had some Rangers with them, but so they had wounded. And they called in a medevac, and we're the only medevac asset. The 160th couldn't get there, probably because they were tasked with some other thing. AFSOC, Air Force Special Operations. They had Ospreys. They couldn't do it because at the end of the day, everyone has a piece of the pie, and when you show up as a medevac guy, they just assume you know how to do your fucking job, right? So those guys could have done the mission, but we were there. And I didn't have enough fuel to get there and back because it's in Syria. And no one had ever been in, no conventional aviation unit had ever been in Syria before. So I was going to be the flight lead for the first one over there, but I knew I didn't have the fuel to get there. And over on the special programs, it's all about solving problems, right? So I'm thinking that if I just solve this problem, I'm the good guy, right? And I saw the OGA folks there, who I'd worked for, and I knew they had an aircraft that was capable of landing in the middle of nowhere that could carry fuel and a hose, and they could give me fuel. So I ran down there real quick. I said, "Hey, man, I actually work for you guys. My day job, I'm here with the Guard. Got a 9-line medevac. Go pick up these D-boys in Syria. I don't have the gas. Can you land out in the middle of, you picked a spot. I land next to you. You fuel me. I top off. You come back here. I go pick the guys up. I got enough fuel to get over there and back now." And they're like, "Fuck yeah, we can do that, right?" Because, fucking make the mission happen. So I'm like, holy shit, man, this is going to be this is a big deal, man. We're showing what we can do. We're working with another agency. This is huge. But I got to run it by my commander. So I run up to him. He's coming back from a training flight. I'm like, "Hey, man, hey, sir, we just got a 9-line. It's in Syria. We don't have the gas, but guess what?" I told him the plan, and I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe my naivety, I just thought he would say something like, "God damn, that's great, man. Let's make that happen." He looked at me like I'd lost my mind, and he goes, "You don't have the gas to get over there." I said, "Yeah, but I just told you how we're going to get gas." "What, are those people on the risk assessment? Who are they?" I don't know them." I'm like, "Look, you don't need to know them. Listen, we're all Americans. It's a war. We got wounded tier 1 guys. We can pull this off, and you can take credit because you're the commander. Commander can take the credit. That's how the game is played." And it was just so confusing to this guy that we were no longer in Florida flying around Jacksonville in the National Guard doing touch and goes at the local airport. He was over fucking whelmed, man. Over fucking whelmed. And he just said, "Hell no, we're not doing that." And so, to my knowledge, those men did not die, or we would have heard about it, but someone else had to go get them, whether that was the 160th or AFSOC. And so people who were counting on us to do our fucking job saw us not do our job. And it wasn't my fault. You see what I'm saying? So that was one of many incidences, with this guy. We had one time for some strange reason, so they eventually moved him over to this base called Key West, which is south of Mosul, and they had a cache there, FST. And so anything comes to that FST, he's there. He can take him to Baghdad or wherever, right? For some strange reason, you figure it out, he couldn't take one of his patients down there. And I think what he said was, I don't know this to be sure, but I think what he said was he wanted to be available in case someone got wounded in Mosul. He could go get them, even though we were closer and it was for us to go get them. So he bumped it to me. I went down there and I picked up this guy, and he probably had been shot 7 times, and he was stable, but he was in a bad way. He had to get to Baghdad. They were going to fly into Germany. And so I get over there, man, and everything was taking longer than it should have, man. And you're burning gas, bro. You know what I'm saying? And this is 2016, 17. There's only a couple places in the country to get gas. Like back in 09, everybody had fucking gas. You can land anywhere and get gas. But here, there's only a couple of fobs that had fuel for us. So you got to take that into consideration. So, man, just too much time had passed. And we finally get the guy on board. And I'm like, "Hey, look, guys, we got to get gas. Let's go over there to the FARP, the Forward Arming and Refueling Point. Get gas before we go down to Baghdad. We don't know what's going to happen in Baghdad." I said, "Are you guys okay with us taking on fuel with a patient in the back?" Because normally they want you, for safety, they want you to get everybody non-essential off. And they were like, no, man, we can't move this guy. This guy's fucked up. I'm like, all right, I understand. I said, but we have to get gas. So here's the issue. We have to get gas. You guys okay with him staying on board? They're like, yeah, man, we're not going to move him. I was like, okay, well, we got to get gas. It has to happen. So I get over there, we hop over there, me and my wingman, we get gas. My commander, whatever fucking, got up on the berm just watching us the whole time, taking on gas with a patient on board. Like, I don't know, man. I guess I got more things going on in my life that I would give a fuck what somebody's doing. But he's just up there watching us, like, micromanage or whatever. And he sends a big nastygram email out later that night. The funny part about all that was we took off, we got down to Baghdad, we dropped the guy off, we crank up, and our plan was to get gas at Taji. As we're flying into Taji, they start getting attacked by rockets and mortars. We can't land. We got to go orbit. We don't want to land at Baghdad because they might attack Baghdad next. So I'm flying around and I'm like, fuck, man, something told me this was going to happen. And I got on the radio and told the TOC up in Erbil, like, hey, man, if anybody's coming south, be advised, Taji's under attack, you can't get gas. I was flying with a second lieutenant or a first lieutenant. He looked at it, he goes, Kirk, I don't want to say this, man, but when we were up there and you're going to get gas with a patient on board, I was totally against it, man. I thought that was the wrong thing to do. I didn't say anything because nobody else said anything. He goes, but now seeing why you took on gas and seeing the predicament we're in, and now we have extra gas where we can't get gas where we thought we could. Now I know why you're the pilot in command. I was like, well, hey, look, man, put that in your back pocket and use it later, carry this information forward, type of thing. So anyway, we got gas, made it back. And like I said, I just asked him, I said, sir, are you telling me I'm not allowed to take on fuel? I mean, you tell me, cause he's on like a Teams call chewing us all out. And I'm just like, man, I've had enough of this fucking guy, man. We had the guy that passed the 160th thing, he quit. He just said, man, I've had enough of this guy. And he went to Kuwait. He's like, I'm tired of dealing with this guy's bullshit and his lies and his drama. He goes, I'll clean shitters or I'll go to Kuwait. And so his commander said, man, just come down to Kuwait. But he got so tired of this guy's bullshit that he was just like, fuck this, I'm out. I wound up flying into Syria, and the commander tried to take the flight from me. He said, Kirk, I come on at 6 o'clock. It was like 2 o'clock. He goes, I come on at 6. Why don't you just let me take it? I said, no, that's not how it works. We're on for 24 hours. If it happens between here and here, I take it. From here to here, you take it. That's how this game is played. Yeah, but I mean, it's just a couple hours. I was like, hey, man, you can't go around making up your own rules. I mean, I'm sorry, but this is the policy. It's higher than a captain in the National Guard, believe it or not. I'm not trying to shit on you or nothing, but, this is Army policy. So he goes to we worked for an attack battalion. We were attached to the 4-6 Cab, which was an Apache unit. So we actually worked for the Apache commander. And he goes in there trying to fucking get me kicked off the flight. And this fucking lieutenant colonel, I swear to God, man, this fucking lieutenant colonel who I'd worked with before, actually, he's listening to the guys. And he had never flown medevac. He was an Apache guy, but he knew enough about how medevac works. And he's like, are you on duty right now? You don't come on duty until 6, and the 9 line drop now. So he goes, I think I'd be more comfortable if Kirk flew this. And fucking I was, a lieutenant colonel tells a captain, that's the way it is, that's the way it is. And of course, man, he's pissed off at me for all this shit, man. You know what I mean? Where he just had problems, man. And I guess that's the issue with the military is like, there's some really cool stuff you get to do, but you're going to work with, every now and then you're going to come across a turd that you can't flush. You're going to get a commander that you can't do anything about it, man. He's a shitty leader and there's nothing you can do about it. One was an issue where I saw several people do things that they would never get credit for, and I think they should. We got an outline, and I'm the first up. I'm the pilot in command for this, with the flight lead for this one, and my wingman just happened to be my commander, and it's the Marine Raiders. They're in Mosul. They had a guy get shot in the head, but he's alive. But can we get into Mosul? I'm like, fuck yeah, we can. You know what I mean? And how crazy is this? Me as a former Force Recon guy going to fly a medevac mission for the Marine Raiders. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is, fuck, I mean, this is what you sign up for, right? So I get the 9 line, I come back to the aircraft, and my commander couldn't get his helicopter started. Instead of him trying to diagnose the problem and, you know, be a professional, he's just screaming at the lieutenant. Well, the lieutenant's right out of flight school. He doesn't know what the fuck's wrong with this helicopter. You see what I'm saying? Screaming at the guy isn't going to fucking help. You know what I mean? You need to troubleshoot. That's why you're the pilot in command, and maybe get the fucking maintenance test pilot over there to help. I mean, you see what I'm saying? But he's just yelling and screaming. Wait, hey, Kirk, don't go. I'll figure this out. And I'm like, I ain't fucking waiting on you. There's a man that got shot in the head, like, I don't know, 50 miles from here. Fuck that. He's on his, you know what I mean? So I'm fucking waiting on you. Dominic Oliveri. I want people to know that name. He was an air assault pilot. They were going out on a training flight, so they had all their gear. He was a former medic. They had all their gear, right? And he sees what's going on. He comes over. He goes, hey, dude, you know, obviously Captain so-and-so can't get his shit together. He knew the rules. You gotta fly with a wingman, because you need a wingman. I said, fuck yeah. He goes, I'm with you, man. Me and my crew. So he was not on the risk assessment. There was nowhere he could call and get permission. He just knew it was the right thing to do, and he fucking did it. So here he is putting his, you know, career at risk or whatever. And all his crew members are as well. But they're willing to do that because it's the right thing. Now, they should have gotten an award for that. They got investigated, which is another story. But he got out of the Army, and he's a captain at Delta Airlines now. So the Army missed out on him, you know what I'm saying, and his crew. So anyway, he's with me. So now I got a wingman. I call up I need a gunship escort. If I go into Mosul, I need a gunship escort. So I call up the Apache, and I knew the guy flying it. His name was Steve Frazee. And by the way, he was my instructor when I transitioned to Apaches a few years later. He was one of my instructors. So I called him up and said, hey, Steve, y'all ready? He goes, man, Dash 2 broke hard. So there's 2 Apaches. His works. The other one is broke hard. Something broke on it, and it's not going to be fixed in a timely manner, or they don't know what's wrong with it. I said, okay, check it out. You're going to come with me right now. I'm going to be the air mission commander for a flight of 3, okay? That way, no one's flying single ship. We've met that criteria. I'm the air mission commander, and I have a gunship escort. So we've met all the criteria. If you come with me now. He's like, that's a great idea. I said, you might want to run it past your battalion commander first, keep him in the loop. And then the radio keys, I hear this guy says, that's a good idea, Kirk. That's what we're doing. By the way, I'm the battalion commander. The battalion commander was in the Apache with him. So he could approve it right then, right there, man. How fucking crazy is that, right? So all 3 of us go up to Mosul. We pick up the Marine Raider. You know, these guys were, you know, fighting for their life, obviously, man, against ISIS, trying to encourage their Iraqi SF guys who they were mentoring to, you know, do this and do that. And they pulled it off, man. You know, they set up the LZ, they defeated, you know, they did all this shit. The bad part about that was several of these men, even though they survived that attack in Mosul, several of them were killed a year later on that C-130 that came apart, that had the in-flight breakup, unfortunately. But on that day, man, they fucking took it to the enemy, man, and then some. So we picked up the Marine and took him back. And like I said, Dom got investigated because he wasn't on the risk assessment, because that's what we care. We don't care about winning wars. We care about fucking paperwork and officers not getting in trouble. You know, they're stupid shit. They should have got the Distinguished Flying Cross. You know, I mean, if we're just giving out medals left and right, which, you know, maybe we are, I don't know. But they should have got the Distinguished Flying Cross. And Steve Frazee for flying a single Apache, him and his commander should have got something, maybe the Distinguished Flying Cross. And the S3 I don't know if I should say his name, Keith Benoit. He approved the mission. He knew what we were doing. He could have said no. He approved it because he knew how important it was. He was a former OH-58 pilot who had supported us on the special programs. That's where he knew me from. We had talked and we had been in the same places. He had provided support for us when he flew scout helicopters. But he approved it, man. He got his ass chewed by some general for sending a single Apache when he was supposed to send two. He did it because it was the right thing. We helped save that guy's life. So those guys should have fucking gotten credit, man. They didn't. It pisses me off. All I could do is, write about it and talk about it and try to say their names because I saw what they did, even though the Army didn't recognize them.
So what would you get into next? You started flying Apaches, I guess.
Well, I did not immediately. I was tremendously disappointed with the lack of will and focus and mission accomplishment of the overall U.S. military command structure there. We could have defeated, ISIS came across the border and murdered, I want to say 2,000 Yazidis in a couple of hours time frame. And you see these guys from miles away with the big convoys, one AC-130 or maybe two A-10s, and you never would have heard of ISIS. And the American, whoever, the political will, whatever you want to call it, man, failed to do that. And it's embarrassing, man, because what the fuck are they doing? I mean, if we're going to play world police, let's play fucking world police. ISIS is bad, fucking kill them. And I did not see, obviously my commander made an impression on me of just being a total fucking shitbird. And I couldn't believe that there are people like that in the U.S. military. And unfortunately, he's not the only one. But I was so disgusted with it, man, I had to get out of the Army. And that's not fair because there's a lot of really talented fucking soldiers and leaders in the Army. You know what I mean? They're out there, man, no doubt. But I was so pissed off, I had to get out. And so my plan was to join the Peshmerga, the Kurdish military, the Kurdish elite military force, because they were fighting ISIS and they were killing these fucking dudes left and right. So, I had some buddies and I reached out to some people and had a meeting with a guy from the Minister of Interior's office. And he comes over and spoke English pretty well, but he had an interpreter with him. And I introduced myself, I was pretty sure he knew who I was through intermediaries, but I wanted to make sure we were on the right track. Long story short, man, I said, man, I want to join the Peshmerga. I'm an American. I want to go fight ISIS. And he was like, oh, yeah, you have an amazing background resume, man. Yeah, you're going to be in charge of our special forces training. I was like, fucking cool. Awesome, right? Okay, well, how many men do I get? Do I get vehicles? What's your policy? How far can I go? Do you have resupply? Do you have NVGs? Can I work at night? Do I go around the Iraqis? Do I work with the Iraqis? So I had all these questions. Like, I'm thinking I'm going to be Colonel Kurtz, man, just fucking, going in fucking Mosul, fucking, putting heads on pikes and shit. And he looked at me kind of confused, like, and I was like, ooh, and I'm wondering if maybe there's a language barrier here. He says, oh, no, you will not go fight. We don't let Westerners fight. You will be in charge of our training. And what I found out was they had several Westerners get killed in Mosul. And the Pirates of the Caribbean guy was the most famous, one of the actors. He got killed as a member of the Peshmerga in Mosul. In their culture, they feel like they should protect you. And so if you get killed, it's a ding on their honor. Whereas I was like, no, I'm willing to take that risk. I'm willing to go fight. And that just wasn't going to happen. And to be fair, my wife said I could do it, but I was not 100% honest with her with what I was going to do. I'm being honest now. Hopefully she doesn't see that part. But so I felt like I was at square one, man, because like I said, I wanted join the Peshmerga. He says, don't you fly helicopters? I said, yeah. He goes, well, man, we got helicopters. You fly support for the Peshmerga, and we're going to have a referendum. We're going to be our own country. So would you like to be a member of the Kurdish Air Force and help us create an Air Force? I'm like, holy shit. Serious? How many people get that chance, man? You know what I mean? You're at the ground floor of a country being born, and you're going to create one of their militaries, man. So I was like, hell yeah. So went home on leave, came back, brought my wife. We started looking at houses and schools and all this type of stuff. I'm like, hell yeah, man. I was a captain in the Kurdish Air Force. And after the referendum, I was going to be a colonel or a lieutenant colonel. And I was going to be in charge of the reconnaissance and, light attack helicopters. We had little birds, MD-530s. So I was like, hell yeah, man, I've won the lottery, brother. This is exactly where I want to be. So my wife got on a plane, went home, like, yeah, man, we'll start packing here pretty soon. We're just waiting for the referendum. So we had the referendum, which is a vote, and 98% of the Kurdish population said they want to be their own country. And so I saw, once again in my life, the American government sell out our allies. They withdrew support for the Kurds and said that they wanted them to be under the Baghdad government. And the fucking Iraqis invaded and just started killing the fucking Kurds, man. And the Americans did nothing about it. And there I was as an American. So, didn't see that one coming, I'll be honest with you. My wife had just left, luckily. I'm in Erbil, and the Iraqis are coming up on Kirkuk, and that's kind of where they're going to make their last stand, because that's Kurdistan. So I talked to Roy, my buddy Roy, a crazy, amazing dude, man, awesome guy, a lot of experience. So we already come up with a plan. We were going to pull the little birds out. I was going to fly one. He was going to fly one. We are going to go down to Kirkuk, refuel, talk to the ground force commander, find the Iraqis, report that to the Kurds, and they were going to, attack the Iraqis. And if anybody got wounded, we could fly them up to Erbil, because we knew where all the hospitals were that had helipads. So I'm pulling the little birds out, man. Now, pre-flight, I'm make sure they got gas. And a guy came up to me and he goes, hey, man, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Kirkuk. He goes, don't do it, man. They're waiting on you. He showed me where they had, the Iraqi Air Force had flown in the night before with Mi-24s, and they had taken this airfield in Kirkuk. And they knew that's where we were going to come to. And they were going to shoot us down. They had air-to-air missiles on their Mi-24s, and they knew me and Roy were there. So they were going to shoot us down and say, this is what happens to people that support the Kurds. So I was like, all right, well, fuck, I guess that changes, today's plans. And not much longer after that, the Minister of Interior found out about it. He calls over there. He said, put the helicopters back in the hangar, lock the hangar, go back to your apartment. Don't call us, we'll call you. And so for the next 4 months, man, I worked out and watched TV, and Kurds in Kirkuk got killed, and Americans didn't do anything about it. And, man, you just feel like you're back at square one, man. Yeah. So
What happened after the 4 months?
they made peace with everybody. They decided they were going to be under the Baghdad government. The Americans came back in and wanted everybody to fucking kiss and make up. Any number of Kurdish families buried their fucking loved ones. You just feel like you feel like you're the butt of a joke at some point, man. These very powerful people make decisions with no regard as to what the consequences of those decisions are, because it doesn't affect them, And who's our big ally in the Middle East right now? It's the Kurds, right? Well, goddamn, where do you think we would be if we would have supported this referendum back in 2017? Or maybe support them in 1991 when they were getting gassed by the fucking Iraqi Air Force. You know what I mean? So you just scratch your head, man. You just scratch your fucking head, man. Yeah. So I spent 3 years with the Kurds, man. I had a really great experience. I got to show my wife that part of the world. I got to fly her around in the helicopters. I showed her the Citadel. They wanted us to tone down the military stuff, and they wanted us to tell people we were like police advisors or whatever. They don't want us to say. Everybody called us the Kurdish Air Force, but you're supposed to say like you're a police advisor or whatever. One day, an ISIS cell, whether it was locals or whether they had infiltrated the city, I don't know. They took hostages in some building downtown, and me and Roy were there, at the airfield. And so this guy's like, "Hey man, fucking ISIS took hostages." And I'm like, "Oh shit, dude, this is exactly what we've been waiting for. This is exactly what we planned for and trained, right?" So they had a tier 1 unit, the counter-terror unit. It was a tier 1 unit, but at this point you were calling it the Erbil SWAT team because they wanted to tone down the military language. But it was a tier 1 hostage rescue unit. So I'm telling Roy, I'm like, "Hey dude, check it out. We'll get 2 little birds. I'll fly gun 1, you fly gun 2. I'll put 4 shooters, assaulters on mine. You put 4 on yours. We're going to come in. It's called a toe in. Like this is the edge of the building. You put the skids on the edge of the building and they walk across. So you could put 4 assaulters on the rooftop at one time. You take off, you orbit, gun 2 comes in. So we're going to be able to put 8 assaulters on the target building in a matter of seconds, and then they can go down and do the rescue or support. They can hit from both sides or whatever." He's like, "Hell yeah, man, that's what we're going to do." So I'm pulling the little birds out, make sure they got gas, pre-flight them and all this stuff, waiting for the SWAT team to, the Erbil SWAT guys to show up. And I'm like, "Fucking here we go, bro. Fucking here we go, man." You know what I mean? This is some epic shit, right? Who's doing this? I'm doing this in the middle of the day. So I wasn't waiting any longer. I wanted to be fucking ready. So I crank it up and I'm sitting there, man. I'm idling. I'm like, "Where the fuck are these guys?" Roy comes walking out of the hangar. He looks at me. He gives me the cut sign. I'm like, "Fuck, what the fuck?" So I cut it off. I go inside, man, and there's these generals. There's a Kurdish police general. There's the SWAT team general. There's the traffic police general. And there's some other fucking general. There's these 4 fucking generals in the office bitching and screaming and arguing about who gets to take credit and who should do this. I'm about to lose my shit, man, because there's like legit hostage situation out in town, right? I'm like, "Hey, man, can we fucking hash this out later? Fucking guys could be getting killed right now. We could fucking make this happen like that, and all you guys can take credit." Well, I'm a captain in the Kurdish Air Force, and these are generals. And you see what I'm saying? And Roy just kind of looks, and Roy's older than me and he's more calm, and he had better rapport with these guys. And he kind of walks between us and he's like, hey, Kirk, why don't you go just make sure the little birds are ready to go? That was kind of his way of saying, "Hey man, they're about to fucking, you don't talk to a general like that." And he's right. He's right. I'm just trying to get the train going. So I go up there, man, and I'm like, God damn. What the fuck? And he comes out, he waves me in. I come back in there. So I'm like, "I'm sorry, gentlemen. I'm passionate about this, but I'm telling myself I have to sell these guys on this mission, right? So put it in their language, not my language is make the fucking mission happen. I got to put it in their language, which is you get to take credit because the media they have, reporters and shit that are surrounding. So, they're all trying to get promoted. They're trying to get to that next step. They're fucking generals. You know what I'm saying? So I got to put it in their language of how it benefits them personally, which is, it makes my fucking gut, whatever. So I briefed them on the plan. They're like, "Nope, no, you're not going to use my helicopters to put his assaulters on the roof." And, my first instinct is this fucking snap, but I hold it together. I'm like, okay. So I said, "Okay, how about this? How about I bring your snipers and we put them on the adjacent building and they can cover the assault. Eventually you're going to have to assault this building sooner rather than later, but eventually you're going to have to assault this. So now we got snipers." No, my snipers are not going to, all right. how about I take a sniper and put it in each helicopter and we orbit the target building and your guys, do the assault. No, I'm not assaulting with his snipers. Fuck, man, running out of options here. I said, okay. How about just me and Roy by ourselves in 2 helicopters with no SWAT guys, orbit, draw attention away from the terrorist and the assault team. And then if anybody gets wounded, we just come in and land. We put the wounded, we go drop off at the hospital. We know where the helipads are at the hospitals that have helipads. We'll have our mask down. Nobody will know it's Americans. How about that? And they were just like, no. And they just start arguing again, man. So I'm like, God damn it. So eventually how that day played out is they did a ground assault from the bottom floor. And I can't remember if one of the SWAT guys got killed or wounded. I think one of the hostages got killed, and they did wind up killing the ISIS guys. But all that shit could have been prevented if they just would have went with our plan. And so at the end of the day, I looked at Roy. He knew what was going on. He just kind of patted me on the back. I was like, hey man, you had a good plan. You're doing the right thing. This it's just not going to work out for us here. And I said, man, I've had enough. He goes, yeah, I have too. So about a week or so later, we rotated home for our leave and we never came back. So I moved back home. I started flying EMS helicopters. Loved it. Great experience. Big boy rules. You're doing really good stuff. You're with good people. And this is what I encourage people to do after their service is to look at law enforcement or EMS or first responder or the fire department because it does give you a sense of purpose. You're around good people. And it's about the best you can do outside of your military combat experience. So I was doing that, man, but I still had the bug, man. I still had the bug. And then I see this ad. The Army made some horrible mistakes. They got rid of the scout helicopter, but they still needed reconnaissance. So then they turned to the Apache, which is not built for reconnaissance. And they just said, we're going to use it as reconnaissance until we figure out what we want to buy for a reconnaissance helicopter, and we'll plug it into a UAV. Horrible idea, man. So now you're doubling the deployments of the Apache guys who are already deploying more than anybody else on aviation side. And instead of flying the helicopter, now you got a guy staring at a damn computer screen trying to fly a UAV. It's like, why don't you just use a UAV guy for that? I mean, it was just whatever. So, but that's what the Army went with. Well, obviously no one wants to do that. So they're short of pilots. They're short of Apache pilots. They're short of experienced pilots. And they're deploying that airframe even more. So there's an ad I think it was on Facebook or something. It was a guard unit. And this guy he was a former cop and he was a full-time Apache instructor, recruiter. He goes, hey man, how would you, if you're a Army aviator and you've always wanted to fly the Apache and you got a day job, you want to come here and fly the Apache, give me a call. And I was like, holy shit. That's it. This is for me, man. You know what I mean? This is for me. So I show it to my wife and she just kind of shakes her fucking head. She knew the drill, man. She's like, I knew you were going to fucking do that. So I get back in the Guard and I'm like, I'm almost 50 years old, which is kind of cool, but not cool because it's like, man, you should have been retired by now. Anyway, I get picked up, man. They're all excited to have me. And I'm like, man, I fucking love it. And we're going to go to Afghanistan. So I'm going to do, it's about a 6-month course to transition from the Blackhawk to the Apache. And then you got to do probably another year of training, before you're really deployable. And I was probably going to start out as a front seat or the co-pilot gunner. They wanted me to be a pilot in command by the time they deployed. It's just a matter of training and time and stuff. And I was like, dude, I've got all the time available, man. I give 100% to this fucking thing. So anyway, man, I started flying Apaches. Everyone was happy to have me there except for one person. And that one person was my standardization pilot. He didn't want me there. And he wanted everyone to look up to him. And for whatever reason, people were looking up to me. Like, oh man, we got this guy, this recon guy, and he was OGA guy, and he flew little birds, and now he's an Apache guy. And it's like, well, I'm new to the Apache, so that doesn't count. I'm just some guy, bro. But I'm willing to, bring something to the table. But they really liked me, and he didn't like that they liked me. He wanted everyone to kiss his ass. I found out later, he had been kicked out of the 160th. He had been kicked out of some other unit. He got kicked out of Fort Rucker. He got kicked out of whatever that base is in Vegas. String of fucking problems. Arrest from civilian police. And the girl changed her story later for whatever reason, but she said she was assaulted by him. Then she changed her story. He was arrested multiple times out in town. Just a goddamn shitbag. He cussed out some W5's wife. That right there should have launched his fucking ass. They kept him there, and he was my immediate boss. He was my standardization pilot, man, and he convinced everyone there that I didn't know how to fly a helicopter. At some point, you got to ask yourself, is it you? I look myself in the mirror and I just say, man, well, is it me? I mean, I'm the common denominator. What is it about me that you don't like? So, and you just have to realize you're going to have mission first people and me first people. If you ever come across a mission first people, they're going to be glad you're around. If you ever come across a me first people, they're not going to like that you're there. And that's just the reality of it, man. And so my dream of flying, the Apache full time and being an instructor pilot, and that was going to be how I end my career. That's not how it worked out, man. He said that, he said I sucked and, this, that, and the other. And, he wanted to draw attention away from him. I'm like, okay, I'm not the guy that arrested you. You've been arrested, 3 times? On active duty, you'd get kicked out for that shit. You see what I'm saying? But they just kept giving the dude a pass and giving him a pass. And finally, man, I just wrote all the fucking bullshit he did. And I said, look, man, I'm not going to go to the IG. I'm going to go through the chain of command, but y'all need to fix this fucking shit like goddamn now. I'm not deploying with that motherfucker. And of course, our deployment got canceled because the Afghan surrender, withdrawal, however you want to look at it. But, man, they were just like, well, we're going to separate you guys. I'm like, all right, that's fine. But he's still there. He's still causing all these problems. He physically threatened me behind my back. And I was like, no, man, that's my goddamn, I draw the line. And then all the people that told me he said that were not willing to write a sworn statement. And so now you're asking yourself, okay, wait a minute. Is this a combat unit? Are you going to go to war? Because nobody's using Apaches for goddamn, fucking fire suppression missions, forest fires. It's a goddamn war machine. So I'm going to go to war, and I'm going to go to war with these guys. And these guys won't even write a sworn statement because they're scared of a guy in uniform. What happens if we get shot down? What happens if we get captured? What happens if we have to fight it out with the bad guys? These are going to be the guys beside me. I mean, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but man, I was in my 50s, early 50s, and I'm like, is it worth it? Is it worth, am I going to go to war with people who aren't going to fight tooth and nail against the enemy? They're not even willing to make simple decisions in a peacetime environment. And man, I never thought I'd do it, man. I never, ever thought I would do it. But I was exactly where I wanted to be. I probably needed to just suck it up for another 6 months. And he would have been gone. He probably would have got arrested again. And I just couldn't do it, man. I transferred back to Georgia in a non-flying position. I'm work for the S3 shop, like I said, as an operations officer. And eventually they forced him to retire because he got arrested again, and they couldn't cover it up anymore. So, man, and the reality is that's how I'm going out. I will no longer fly I'll never fly an Apache again, never fly a Blackhawk again. What are you going to do, man? I made the decision at the time, and it is what it is, man. I got 2 years before I can retire. I can look back on my career and be proud of what I've done. I've done my very best to put the mission first. Not everyone puts the mission first, but I'm tired of banging my head against the wall, man. So when it's time for me to retire, I'm going to retire, and I'm going to thank everyone that helped me get there and everyone who's helped me along the way. But I'm just tired of fighting, man. I'm just tired of fighting against these goddamn people. I've just had enough. So.
And how you doing today, Kirk?
I'm very, very fortunate for the situation that I'm in. I wrote a book. All my teammates and critics and such have been very supportive. They like what I said. My family's very proud of me and happy about me. I'm home every night. I fly EMS helicopters full-time for a large hospital there in Atlanta. They bought their own helicopter, and I fly corporate jets part-time. So maybe I'll stay with EMS flying because I do enjoy it. Maybe I'll go to the airlines when I build up enough jet time. I will continue to come to podcasts like yours and tell the story of the people that I saw that did amazing things that never got the credit for it. So I'm happy with what I have. There's no way to maybe there is a way to figure out. I have empathy and sympathy for anyone, but certainly my teammates who become the 22 a day. Obviously, in a perfect world, I would have known it was going to happen, or someone would have known and we would have intervened. At the end of the day, what I'm trying to do is tell people it's okay to say that you don't want the ride to stop. No one wants the ride to stop, but it's also okay to transition from that high level of operation to veteran. I'm okay with the identity, a new identity of saying I'm a veteran. It's okay. Because I'm no longer a shooter. I no longer fly a military aircraft. I'll probably never deploy again in uniform, and that's okay. I'm not going to take another contract job. So it's okay. Now you have to be ready for that, and I encourage people to kind of prepare themselves for that. But the ride will end, and you don't want it to end abruptly. And goddamn, man, we love you, man. Please don't be the person that becomes a 22 a day. You can transition to being the veteran. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. And man, I'm happy in that transition myself. So if I'm happy with it, I think everybody else can find some level of happiness with it.
Yeah. What's the name of your book, and where could people find it?
Absolutely. The first book, the one that's out right now, is called War Junkie, A Cautionary Tale. I would love for you to go to my website, kgspradleyauthor.com. You can order it there, or if you hit the hot button on the bottom, it'll take you to Amazon, or you can just go direct to Amazon and order War Junkie, A Cautionary Tale. And I have a friend who I went to flight school with who's making films now. He wants to make a documentary about me reuniting with the Marines and the corpsmen who saved me in Ramadi in May 10th, 2005. So be watching for that.
Right on, man. And anywhere people could follow your journey on social media?
Absolutely. I'm in all the social media spaces as KG Spradley Author. That's YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X, and even on LinkedIn. You can see some stuff on LinkedIn. I would appreciate the support. I make good money in my job. I'm not making money off this. My goal is to tell the story of a number of people that I saw do amazing things that never got the credit for it. I just really appreciate the opportunity to come here and tell that story. I think you in particular, but people like yourself that take the time to do this, to hear these stories, man. I can't say enough about it. It's so it's such a good thing, man. It's just very it's a really big deal for us to be able to talk, to say this stuff. So thank you for making all this happen.
Yeah, thank you, brother. It's been a pleasure sitting with you, man.
Shoot ya.